Good morning, and let me welcome all of you to our council meeting. We're going to have the pleasure of starting today's meeting with an invocation from one of my favorites and soon to be one of your favorites, Father Andrew Lebens from St. Francis of Assisi Catholic Church. And following his invocation, we will have a Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us for both of those. Father Lebens, great to have you this morning.
Thank you, Mayor. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, just as you once favored the ancient Israeli leaders, King David and King Solomon, and blessed them with an abundance of supernatural virtue, bestow now your divine blessing upon these men and women who have been entrusted with guiding and leading the people of the city of Wichita. Fill their hearts with the fire of your divine love, and their souls with the breath of your divine life. Seal their minds and consciences with the infused virtues of wisdom and understanding, knowledge and good counsel. Make them conduits of true justice, promoters of heavenly peace, and courageous witnesses to the truth. And finally, Lord God, grant that by fulfilling their duties of governance here on this earth, they may come at last to the joys of your eternal kingdom. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Father. It's great to have you this morning, and tell our friends out at St. Francis hello. We have approval of the minutes of March 26, 2019. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, I move that we approve the meeting minutes for the 26th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. We have some proclamations this morning. I'll handle it this time. Thank you, sir. So our first proclamation this morning is for National Public Health Week. If we could have Christine Stewart and anybody Christine would like to bring up, if Christine's here. You're all welcome. Just don't get too close to Bob Layton. He's great to have you all. I have a proclamation from the city of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas during the first full week in April each year, the American Public Health Association brings together communities across the country to observe National Public Health Week. And whereas this year's theme, Creating the Healthiest Nation for Science, for Action, for Health, celebrates the power of prevention, advocating for healthy and fair policies, sharing strategies for successful partnerships, and champion the role of a strong public health system. And whereas the city of Wichita is a proactive supporter of health through initiatives such as the Wichita Master Bicycle Plan, the Wichita Master Pedestrian Plan, Open Streets ICT, multimodal and street guidance plans, the formation of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board, support for the Project Access, ensures clean air and safe water. And whereas National Public Health Week provides community members with an excellent opportunity to make small changes that will have big impacts in their health, now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, Mayor of the City of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim April 1st through the 7th, 2019 as 2019 National Public Health Week, and encourage all Wichitans to do their part in creating a healthy community by supporting health initiatives and to participate and exercise healthy eating habits and regular medical checkups. And who would like to? Thank you. Let you have the podium.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Longwell and Wichita City Council members for reading our proclamation and allowing us to be here today.
I'm Christine Stewart, Health Protection Director with the Sedgwick County Health Department. Also joining me today are a few members of the Coalition of Coalitions Building the Case for Public Health in Sedgwick County. As stated, National Public Health Week is this week, April 1st through 7th, and is part of a growing movement to create the healthiest nation in one generation. This week, with the support of the American Public Health Association, we will celebrate the power of prevention, advocate for healthy and fair policies, share strategies for successful partnerships, and champion the role of a strong public health system. Each day of the spearheaded American Public Health Association National Public Health Week will focus on a public health topic, including healthy communities, violence prevention, rural health, technology and public health, climate change, and global health. Also this week, the Sedgwick County Health Department will bestow its annual Dorn Fredrickson Lifetime Commitment to Public Health Award to Mr. Steve Cohen, President and CEO of the Kansas Health Foundation. Dr. Dorn Fredrickson was the Kansas Health Foundation Distinguished Professor of Preventive Medicine at the KU School of Medicine in Wichita. He also served as a health officer for the Sedgwick County Health Department from 2002 to 2008. He passed away in August of 2008. His parents and many others described Dr. Fredrickson as a humanitarian who focused his career on helping the uninsured and medically underserved. Thank you again for your support of public health in Wichita and the surrounding communities.
Our next proclamation is for Mayor Austin and Child Abuse Prevention Month. So Mayor, you and your friends could join us. I should say Mayor David Austin. Mayor, it's always great to have you in these chambers. Thank you. So I have a proclamation from the City of Wichita that reads, whereas children are key to the state's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, and while children are our most valuable resource, they are also our most vulnerable. And whereas children have a right to be safe and to be provided an opportunity to thrive, learn, and grow, and whereas child abuse and neglect can be prevented by supporting and strengthening Kansas families, thus preventing the far-reaching effects of maltreatment, providing the opportunity for children to develop healthy, trusting family bonds, and consequently building the foundations of communities. And whereas we must come together as partners so that the voices of our children are heard by all, and we are as a community extending a helping hand to children and families in need. And whereas by providing safe, stable, and nurturing relationships for our children, free of violence, abuse, and neglect, we can ensure that Kansas children will grow to their full potential as the next generation of leaders helping to secure the future of this state and nation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. And Mayor, I'll let you have the podium if you would like.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have a gift here. These are pinwheels that we'll pass out. And that's pinwheel is the symbol for Child Abuse Prevention Month. So hopefully you'll be seeing those throughout the city here before too long. So I want to thank Mayor Longwell and Vice Mayor Bluebaugh and City Manager Layton and the rest of the City Council for allowing us to be here today. And while yes, I do have the honor of serving as the mayor in Bel Air, I also am here representing Kansas Children's Service League today. We're a private nonprofit here in Kansas. We've been around for 126 years, where we're dedicated to preventing child abuse, strengthening families, and empowering parents and youth. We believe, matter of fact, we know that children do well when the parents do well. And our firm foundation is that all children deserve great childhoods. Children who are raised in loving and supportive environments are more likely to grow up and help create secure, healthy communities and be more productive, prosperous workers. Children who are raised in stable families do better academically and are shown to be more financially successful and contribute to our society. Great childhoods and healthy, productive futures are undermined, unfortunately, by what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. ACEs include things like child abuse, including physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, neglect, stress, divorce, parents being unemployed, parents suffering with addiction and dealing with mental illness issues. Sadly, greater than 1 in 4 people have experienced at least one ACE, and 1 in 8 have experienced at least 4 or more ACEs during their childhood. The greater number of ACEs increase the risk of long-term adverse consequences increase at the same time. Reducing ACEs leads to positive long-term outcomes for children and communities, including lowering risk for serious health complications and helping children grow into more prosperous and productive adults. ACEs impact our businesses as well. Strong families build strong businesses. A high ACE score, three or more here in Kansas, are more prevalent among adults under the age of 65. That impacts the current workforce. Higher ACE scores increase the likelihood of academic failure, like I said, by more than 3 times. And this is research by the CDC. Higher ACE scores result in increased work-related injury, absenteeism, and a decline in individual worker productivity that cost employers, you ready for this, $147,000 over a lifetime. Strengthening families is the best investment the state and communities can make for the future. Every $1 that we as a state invest on the front end will save more than $7 on services on the back end. Implementing effective policies and strategies to prevent child abuse and neglect can save taxpayers across this country more than $80 billion. So, how are some ways that you can participate in this? As April, like I said, is Child Abuse Prevention Month, we'll have the pinwheels up, and hopefully we'll have those here, so appreciate you taking those. But I got to point out something. There is, on April 5th, I'm going to ask all citizens to wear blue in support of child abuse prevention programs. And if you wear blue, you can put it on Twitter and show your support. So we're asking everybody to wear blue on April 5th. And I see lots of people wearing blue today. But this is something that hopefully the mayor and the rest of you will appreciate. In support of economic development, and of course, being a baseball fan, Couture and I recently put our deposit down for our season tickets and noticed that the shirt we get is blue. So, city council members, you can support baseball and the regional economic development and Child Abuse Prevention Month at the same time. I'm just saying. Thank you.
Sure, Mayor. Mayor Austin, thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of others, both in your day job and your mayoralship. We appreciate you. Have a proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. If we could have the Polina Nations and Miss Chisholm Trail join us. Do we have? Nice to have you this morning. You should have an entourage. Where's your entourage? Well, you can just stand here and we'll give you the podium in just a second. You can have up to an hour and a half. Proclamation from the City of Wichita. Whereas 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 men will be sexually assaulted during their lifetime, with approximately 1 person sexually assaulted every 98 seconds and 300,000 individuals sexually assaulted in the United States. And whereas when a family member is sexually assaulted, it can cause long-term detrimental effects on the victim, which also affects the family, friends, and the community. And whereas sexual assault is a global issue that is damaging to society as a whole and permeates all demographics, regardless of socioeconomic standing, race, gender, or religious preferences. And the crime of sexual assault violates an individual's personal integrity, privacy, safety, and humanity through the strategic use of physical, psychological, sexual, and emotional power and control methods. And whereas victims should have access to all resources required during the healing process, which includes medical services, legal services, counseling, and housing services that further healing following a sexual assault. And whereas we remind sexual assault victims that they are not alone, and urge victims and families to seek aid from the National Sexual Assault Hotline, 1-800-656-HOPE. And whereas it is important to acknowledge the hardworking dedication and kindness of individuals that provide assistance and services to victims of sexual assault. And whereas the United States presidents, Congress, organizations, and other agencies have displayed their commitment to eradicating sexual assault, and we must devote ourselves to protect vulnerable and at-risk members of our society with local programs, state coalitions, national and global organizations, and other agencies that advocate and increase public awareness for sexual assault and to eliminate it through advocacy, empowerment, education, and prevention. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, Mayor of the City of Wichita, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2019 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Wichita, and encourage all citizens to remember the advocacy and awareness of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And we'll turn the podium over to you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to advocate for those that have been affected by sexual violence. So I'm Miss Chisholm Trail. I'm a local title holder with the Miss Wichita organization, but I'm also an advocate with the No More organization. And the No More organization is a globally recognized organization that hopes to eliminate sexual assault and domestic violence through advocacy, awareness, and education. Furthermore, I continue to advocate for this issue because I personally have been affected by sexual violence. And because of my strength in going through the court process, I decided to help others. This is an issue that touches so many. In fact, in 2017, there were over 3,700 calls to Kansas hotlines specifically related to sexual violence. Furthermore, over 5,200 individuals sought help because of sexual violence-related incidents, so it tells us that not many people are reporting. And in fact, only 2 out of 3 Kansans do report, and 80% of the time, it's because of embarrassment. It's because they feel that no one else is gonna listen, care, or support them. So with this proclamation, I ask you all to remember those survivors, to remember that this is a situation and a circumstance that is entirely preventable through education. And we can continue to support our survivors and those that have been affected by sexual violence all over the world by wearing teal this month. And in fact, today actually is the National Recognition Day for wearing teal for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And so I encourage all of you guys to start having those conversations with your loved ones, to start saying, what can I do to change my community, to impact those, and to change our culture into a culture of consent every single day. Thank you. I also wanted to give you some pins. Thank you very much.
So Madam Clerk, can you call the next item, please?
Under the public agenda, the first speaker has rescheduled to April 16th. The next speaker, Sybil Strum, is asking why she's being treated like an outcast in her own community.
My name is Sybil Strum. I reside at 3000 West Douglas, Mount Carmel Apartments, apartment 412. Ever since I come back to Wichita, I've been treated badly. I've been treated by the police, where they stalked me. And also, when I asked for help, I got nowhere. I have done things for the community. I have been a nurse's aide. I've been a waitress. I've helped the schools out, USD 259. I helped promote learning by teaching kids math, science, and everything. I was also safety patrol at Franklin Elementary. I also actually helped fundraise. Instead of taxpayers paying for the bill, I did promoting raffle tickets and having movie nights. And I also had promoted ESLO, to where the Hispanics would learn to speak English. What has happened to me? I've been through the ringer. I'm at a place I don't like, and I've called Brandon about it, and I just don't like it here. I tell my relatives, don't come here, because I have been treated so bad, you wouldn't believe it. I've had police officers, when I needed help, when people would disturb the peace, they would not come to my rescue. I had my house taken away because it was old. And I had the Central come into my house without my permission. And I called up Mr. Unruh of the Sedgwick County Courthouse deal. And I said, I do not know this guy. He's coming in, he's threatening to condemn my house. And then he made number 2 in my potty. I'm sorry to say that, but he did. He made number 2 in the bathroom. He ended up not getting in trouble for it. I want answers. Why am I being treated like an outcast? I was born here. I was born at St. Francis Hospital. And it took 10 years to get my ID. Dion Leffner could tell you, I had to go through a lot of headaches just to get my ID. I had an immigration person following me saying, stuck in the doors, stuck in the doors. Do you speak English? I speak English. And also, I have proof that I have won awards. And you people don't understand. You can't treat people like trash. We have to be treated nicely. You go to these people from different countries and cities and welcome them with open arms. You go to businesses, you ask them, what do you need? They get it. I haven't got anything. I want answers now. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Vanessa Christofferson, thanking the council for their support for the Civic Engagement Academy.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council, and City Mayor Layton. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and address council today. My name is Vanessa Christofferson, and I'm here representing the Wichita Civic Engagement Association. The Wichita City Engagement Academy was established in the spring of 2018. Since our conception, we've currently been in the midst of our third session, which has an impressive class size of 32 students. I wanted to express my deepest appreciation for the support, the supporting grant that was provided by the Kansas Health Foundation. Without this foundation, we wouldn't have been able to take flight. We'd like to thank former council member Janet Miller, as well as current members of the City of Wichita Council for supporting us. We consider ourselves fortunate to have had the opportunity to not only learn, participate, but find ways to better serve our community as a whole. Working members of our great program, this has really contributed to our personal growth in leadership roles. Our association has a bunch of members that have come out of there that have gone on to serve on various boards, such as district advisory boards, animal control, I have one here from the Bike Pedal Advisory Board, just to name a few. As I previously stated, I am currently a member of the Wichita Civic Engagement Association, and I do serve as president. We developed the association to continue to network amongst ourselves, utilizing some of our various talents in large and small city programs, and stuff that we kind of got going on within our community. The Academy has truly inspired us as graduates to become civically involved with this great city we call home. We'd like to ask the council to consider ways to assist us with continuation and funding for this program. The Kansas Health Foundation grant does expire the end of 2019, and we kind of feel it's really important to continue this program within our community. It does give our graduates a sense of a sense of pride to develop a platform, become more involved in our community. I know as a younger generation, it's important for us to get involved, and this is one way to really just ignite that passion, and it is our hope that we can continue to provide that for our great city.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any questions? Thank you for sharing. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent agenda items 1 through 22, and I'd like to make a note that there's a correction on the agenda. Airport consent item 22 should be regular consent item.
Okay, thank you. Are there any items that need to be pulled for clarification or discussion? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull items 10 and 11.
Okay. Any other items that need to be pulled? Seeing none other, I will move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 22 with the change that the clerk announced, with the exceptions of items 10 and 11.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Councilmember Johnson, you want to?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to invite Mark down to talk about the great work that Habitat for Humanity and Mennonite Housing is doing in our community. I think this is something worth highlighting for folks to see their great work.
Thank you, Council Member. Good morning, Mayor and Council members. Mark Stanberry for the Housing and Community Services Department. The items involved here provide development subsidies for the construction of affordable single-family housing, and I have Ann Fox to speak on item 10 here. She'll tell you a little bit more about what she plans to do with the funding and her development project.
And glad you're here, and you've got to go back to Rotary now and tell them how much funding we're doing.
There we go. Mayor Longwell, council members, city manager. The funding proposal that you're seeing will allow Habitat for Humanity to build 7 single-family dwellings on Green, Estelle, and Volusia in the 11-1200 blocks. This is part of 67214, the 4th most distressed community in the state of Kansas. It's up from 2nd most distressed in 2014, which is exciting. Those 7 houses will hold 42 people, 12 adults and 30 children, their families on a waiting list who are already completing sweat equity and saving toward the closing costs in order for the privilege to build a home. Not to add any pressure, but if you would approve this grant today, I have Spirit Aerosystems, Textron Aviation, and their supply chain geared up and ready to raise the wall on 3 of those homes starting tomorrow on North Estelle. An awesome collaboration with our aircraft industry here in the community. Then I want to thank you so much for considering this support. Families who make 35 to 65% of area median income have the opportunity to become homeowners when you help us as low-income affordable housing contractors to build these homes in a way that the families can then afford. I also want to say that providing a great community really starts one block at a time. I would like to commend Mark Stanberry, who's worked with us as construction prices go up and the cap on the cost of building a home makes it very difficult to stay within the parameters. He's open to our conversations with him about how to work through this in our community and still keep the homes affordable for families. I also I drove here from the job site, and there's 2 brand new homes that we built last year. In between them, a owner-occupied home with serious deferred maintenance issues. And I was firsthand to Officer Tapia, who helped the homeowner to understand how she could apply for some grant money that's been made possible through the city. And this morning there's a 30-foot roll-off in her front yard, and things already look cleaner and better. And I know that Camila Alexander has really worked with that homeowner too. So it's when we really work through relationships that we're making a huge difference in the neighborhoods and the quality of life here in Wichita. Thank you for your support, and I urge you're okay so I can get my crews working tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, do you want to take 10 and 11 together?
Yeah. We also have Mennonite housing here too.
Yes, Mayor, council members, we have Byron Adrian with Mennonite Housing that's also here to speak to you a little bit about the projects he plans to undertake.
Mayor, council members, city manager, I just want to say thank you to you for your support of Mennonite Housing. Over the last 20 years, we've been able to assist over 200 families to be able to become first-time home buyers in the neighborhood revitalization area through the use of the home program. So I want to thank you for that. This current proposal that we have today is for an additional 3 homes, 2 on North Indiana and 1 on North Broadview. We do have buyers already identified. We're working with them, getting them through the application process so that they can be able to attain home ownership also. So we look to move very quickly on these. Again, I want to thank you all for your support of Mennonite Housing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brandon, thanks for bringing some attention to this. This is a great way to lift up families and lift up neighborhoods. The only thing I'm unsure about, do these grants require the council members in those districts to help raise the walls?
So I actually have. So
Mayor challenge.
That sounded like a past tense.
So we should require the mayor to help
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
There we go.
All right.
Second that.
Councilmember Johnson, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to highlight these 2 organizations. It's great attending those key giving ceremonies where they pass over the keys to the new homeowners and seeing the happiness on their faces and love welcoming new families to the district. With that, I would move that we approve items 10 and 11 on the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Report of the Board of Bids and Contracts dated April 1st, 2019.
And you don't have to stay till the end. You guys can go get started on the house.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Hannah Lane, Department of Finance. I'm here to present the Board of Bids from April 1st meeting. First engineering bid we have is downtown fiber and signalization upgrades. Recommendation is to reject all bids. Next engineering bid we have is Terrace Street water and sewer replacement. Recommendation is Donliner and Sons Construction for $131,200. Next engineering bid is stormwater sewer number 734 to serve Fox Run Addition. Recommended award is Pearson Construction for groups 1 and 2 for an aggregate total of $493,507.34. Next engineering bid is manhole rehabilitation and reconstruction project. Recommended award is Donliner and Sons Construction for $206,974. Next engineering bid is sanitary sewer system to serve Edgewater 3rd Edition. Recommended award is Nowak Construction for $689,873.50. First purchasing bid is fiberglass hinge frame and lid. No bids were received. And last purchasing bid is liquid chlorine bulk delivery. Recommended award is Brentag Southwest at 0.3475 per pound. That's all the bids, and with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions, discussion on any of the bids? Seeing none, I move that we award the bids as presented.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Substantial amendment to the 2018-2019 Annual Action Plan.
Once again, good morning, Mayor, council members. Mark Stanberry for Housing and Community Services. Today, we will ask you to close a public hearing for a substantial amendment to the city's 2018-2019 Annual Action Plan for entitlement grant funding. This substantial amendment involves only one specific activity. Just some brief background here. The city receives an annual allocation of funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The funded activities are designed to align to the city's goal of creating a livable and sustainable community and are used to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and affordable housing as well. Our entitlement grant programs include the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, and also the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. The CDBG program is the subject of our substantial amendment request today. CDBG activities must meet national objectives, either benefiting low to moderate income persons, preventing slums or blight, or addressing urgent community needs. They must be used for eligible spending activities, and not less than 70% of spending must benefit low to moderate income persons. Our CDBG grant for 2018-2019 was $2.8 million. The approved plan that we have in place allocates $5.7 million for eligible activities during 2018 and 2019. It also includes some unallocated funds as well from prior year resources and also Section 108 loan repayments. This specific activity is improvements to Mount Vernon Road between Oliver and Woodlawn, including addition of a bicycle lane in District 3 for a total of $125,000. This is the only activity that's being amended, the subject of our substantial amendment. The funding sources for this will come from the acquisition and development activity that was previously allocated $100,523, and also Section 108 loan repayments that we have available for $24,477. Citizen participation activities included publishing notices in the Wichita Eagle on February 22nd and March 8th. We also published the notice on the city's website continually for the last 30 days. We also broadcasted notice of the substantial amendment on City 7 between February 25th and March 29th. The substantial amendment document was made available through neighborhood resource centers, the Housing Community Services Department, City Hall, and specified Wichita Public Library branches as well. Our recommended action for you today is to close the public hearing for the substantial amendment to the 5th year annual action plan, to approve the substantial amendment to the 2018-2019 5th year annual action plan, and to approve the funding recommendation and also authorize the necessary signatures. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? So out of all of these numbers, nearly $6 million, the only change is the $125,000.
That is correct. Yes, Mayor.
That doesn't seem to be a substantial amendment, but I guess that's semantics.
Yes, it's a new activity for this year, so.
All right, we get that. Seeing no questions, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. We won't bring it back to the bench yet.
Sorry about that. My name is Janet Wilson, 1152 North Estelle, D1, greatest district in the city of Wichita. I think the walk path is a beautiful thing. My concern is that you've come up during the last year to make an adjustment. I have a street at 11th and Erie that I've been trying for the last 20 years to get paved. And yet you can come up with money for a walk path that, and I'm in favor of the walk path, I just want you to know, because it serves a great district. But when we do these things, we need to look out and see where we can impact quality of life issues, as well as, and health is very important, and I appreciate that. But when you're living on a street where you can't utilize it for normal activities such as barbecuing, sitting out on your front porch, and doing any outdoor activity because you have asthma and the road is muddy, I think we need to reassess where we're putting our funding to when we do things. I understand this was money that was found, but if we can find the money to do a walk path, we can find the money to fix our streets too. And I thank you, and I do approve of what you're doing with the funding. I think it's a good thing. I think we need to get more people outdoors and exercising. Thank you and have a blessed day. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shirley Ben Kelly, and I also want to speak to the funding. And I live on 1100 block on North Erie. Janet mentioned the dirt road. Been there for going on 6 years and really have made some changes in the block and hopefully to expand that on out into the community. I had talked to, I forget the gentleman's name that comes out and makes the petition to put it on the budget. So I too would like support with paving the street because it's a dirt road. I'd like to say thank you to the Public Works who comes out now and grade the street. It's looking a lot better when they grade. But as one of those people who experience allergies and looking at some of that, I too would like to see that street paved. So would appreciate if the council would approve some of the funds to go ahead and pave that street. It would be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Did you say you have a petition right now?
No, we had started it a couple of years ago, but I wasn't able to get the individuals who own the home and got the information because it's only 2 homeowners that's in the block, and that's myself, and I have a neighbor that lives on the corner, and they have the biggest lot, so that brunt of having to look at that cost would be on the 2 of us. And then we've had some changes in ownership in the block. So I am in the process of contacting them again for support also.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Manager, have we ever paved streets using CDBG funds?
On a very limited basis, we have, yes.
Okay. Any other speakers? Double check again. Any other speakers? All right, now we'll bring it back to the bench. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Water Conservation 2019 Rebate Program.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Alan King, Director of Public Works and Utilities. Water conservation is a critical part of the city's water resource planning. If we can blunt the growth of water demands into the future, we can find ways to meet those demands with much less expensive means like new water sources. So it's an integral part of our water resource planning, and we have different measures to try to achieve a goal, and one of those is rebate programs. So I'd like to invite Penny Feist, up to talk about the proposed rebate program. She's the Strategic Services Manager for Public Works and Utilities. Penny?
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Penny Feist, Public Works and Utilities. Like Alan mentioned, one of the key pieces of our future water supply planning is blunting that future growth. And so that gold oranges line you see there is our conservation goal, and it represents about 80 million gallons each year that we're trying to save. The blue bar represents what we've saved to date through the conservation, the rebate program, and then the green bars represent the Spirit Effluent agreement that we have, that they are now introducing effluent, partially treated effluent, into their plant operations instead of potable water. This next slide here, the table represents the funding that we've allocated per year. We've had this program in place since 2013. And then the pie chart represents the type of devices that have been eligible and submitted for rebate since that time. It's been over 11,000 devices that we've awarded rebates for, representing about 268 million gallons saved per year. This chart shows those 8 devices that are eligible for rebate and kind of the popularity of each item. As you see, high efficiency toilets come in on top. And so earlier in 2013 and 2014, there was more money and funding allocated at that time. Just a little bit of history, that was during a drought period, and we were responding to drought conditions. And so just to sum it up, we're recommending the 2019 rebate program be offered until $100,000 and funding is exhausted, or December 31st. We are proposing that all the eligibility requirements remain the same, which is you must be a City of Wichita water customer. Once you are approved for a rebate, there is a credit applied to your water account. Customers are eligible for up to 5 rebates per year, so if you've already submitted rebates in the past, you're eligible for up to 5 again this year. And then we have a website, www.savewichitawater.com, where you can find a list of eligible devices, the application, more information about conserving water, and staff contacts. Because it's April, we're recommending that the program be retroactive back to January 1, so if customers have already purchased eligible devices and can provide a proof of purchase, they can submit that retroactive back to January 1st. So the recommended action is that City Council approve the 2019 Water Conservation Rebate Program, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any further discussion? We appreciate the update and good program as we probably are nearing the end of some of these opportunities. We still think it obviously adds value, and so I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Design concept, supplemental agreement number 1, and funding for improvements to Hoover Road multi-use path from Zoo Boulevard to 29th Street North.
Good morning, Mayor, Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a proposed design concept for a multi-use path on Zoo Boulevard on Hoover from Zoo Boulevard to 29th Street North. I might talk about some project goals and background on this project because we've got quite a bit of work that's been done over the last year and a half now leading up to this point just to develop a concept. You'll see to the left, shaded in green, is Sedgwick County Park. To the right is our future Crystal Prairie Lake Park at K96 in Hoover. When this project was identified in the bicycle master plan that the council approved in 2013, that was one of the goals and one of the reasons for this was to connect those parks eventually. There's also a lot more residential development that's been happening in the area and more of a demand to get to and from Sedgwick County Park in particular and around the neighborhoods that are developing in the area. The Wichita Bicycle and Pedestrian Board had also identified the proposed path as a significant priority for the near future. So what you see here in blue, this is a little bit hard to see, but what you see in blue is the ultimate goal when the bicycle master plan was approved. What is in red has actually already been constructed by private project, and I'll show you a few pictures of that here in a moment. So what we are wanting to do is connect the blue part from 29th Street to the left down to Zoo Boulevard with this proposed project. Back in June of 2017, the City Council approved a design agreement to begin development of design concept for this project. Then in March of 2018, we took the design concept before the District 6 Advisory Board. There were some concerns from adjacent property owners at that time, and the District Advisory Board did not recommend approval of the project moving forward at that time. Since then, we have had several meetings with the property owners. We've looked at multiple options that they presented, which I'll show you in just a moment. We made a few changes to our alignment. Nothing's changed as far as being on the east side of Hoover, as you see, but we made some adjustments to try to have less impact on existing right-of-way, and that's the concept that we're recommending today. And then on February 4th, so with those meetings behind us, having spent some time looking at this more with the property owners, looking at their options, on February 4th of this year, the District 6 Advisory Board did approve the proposed concept and the routing along Hoover as a 9-2 vote. On March 25th, the Wichita Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Board unanimously approved the concept that you see today. I wanted to show you some existing conditions looking north at 21st Street. This area has been platted. There's considerable right-of-way to be used. There's a lot of space. The ditches are not as concerned for keeping drainage there, so we can make this work fairly easy. Looking north at 23rd, this is where some of the more considerable concerns were from adjacent property owners. You can see with the ditches here that it's a challenge we can't put the path in the ditch for a variety of reasons. To close up those ditches and accommodate with storm sewer at this point in time would be costly and would be something that would be sacrificed later if and when the road was improved. One of the things we looked at over the last year was to see what would happen with the currently adopted capital improvement program and whether or not improvements to Hoover might make it in the 10-year CIP. Based on the decision matrix that the council uses and the projects that were considered for the adopted CIP, that project did not make it into the CIP for improvements in the next 10 years. So we decided to move forward with what we could do. So in this area in particular, we are adding some minimal storm sewer improvements, allowed us to move the path a little bit closer to the road and not have as much impact on right-of-way acquisitions. This is the path that's been constructed adjacent to Sandcrest Addition, south of 29th. This was done by petition by the developer for that residential area. And then the last one I wanted to show you was at the north end of the project. This is looking at the K96 interchange. You can see the connection's been made all the way to the south terminal. Eventually, when the park goes in, this connection would be made through and under the bridge. So I wanted to show you the other alternates that the adjacent property owners asked us to look at, and we spent quite a bit of time with them. And I won't go into the length and time of detail we spent with them, but I wanted to summarize a few things. So if you see the red and blue again, the blue is what we want to, the red is what's already been constructed from K96 to the south. The blue is our proposed project to make the connection down to Sedgwick County Park. The property owners along the east side of Hoover in particular asked us to look at some other routing that you see in the green and the yellow. And their thought was that maybe we could do something that more people could use, would have less direct impact on them. And so we did. We took a look at that, at these two alternates, and we came to a point. I'm not going to ask you to digest all of this, but I'll give you some highlights real quick. Needless to say, when you look at length overall, you've got a path now that's 2 to 3 times as long as taking the direct route along Hoover. Those circuitous routes, we would predict, would probably not be utilized real effectively. Most people want to use the most direct route down Hoover anyway. But even if they were, there's a lot of challenges. There's retaining walls that need to be built. There's considerable right-of-way that would need to be purchased. Some of it was going through existing backyards in a brand-new development that had swimming pools and other amenities. We considered all those costs for right-of-way acquisition, for retaining walls. There were some issues dealing with the berms going through there, tree removal, quite a few things we had to deal with. So I would just go to the right column and give you a quick summary. Our original recommendation and the recommendation before you today along Hoover is at the top. It's just under $700,000 total cost for construction and right-of-way. And any of the other options you can see below that are at least 3 times that cost and well over $2.1 million. So the proposed concept we've come back to is still along the east side of Hoover. Based on the project goals then to provide a connection between Zoo and K96, the cost comparison with the other options, and the fact that that path has already been constructed that you saw in red, this is the proposed route that we are recommending today. And as I mentioned, we did make some revisions where possible to move closer to Hoover without impacting the drainage, and that helped us minimize some of the right-of-way impact. One of the more critical components of this project, and the reason why we're bringing this before you today, because I'll talk about funding in a minute, because right now construction funding is not available for this project. However, we plan to put a traffic signal in at Zoo and Hoover. This signal is warranted right now for vehicular traffic. There's been some accidents in the area. Traffic counts have gone up considerably since we completed the interchange at K96 and Hoover. There's a lot been happening with development in the area. We think that signal needs to be installed sooner than later, even if it's done up front before the path is completed. So we've been working with Sedgwick County to look at a possible cost sharing for this signal. As you can see, it serves one of their entrances to the zoo and the Sedgwick County Park. And the biggest goal of this signal then, as you can see in the blue, is to provide a pedestrian connection to the path in Sedgwick County Park. So again, one of the reasons why we're asking for your approval today is we have a separate funding source with our annual traffic signal budget that we think we could use in 2020, along with a share from Sedgwick County that we could get this traffic signal installed sooner while we're trying to figure out where the rest of the funding will come from for the path. The existing budget is $30,000. Today, staff is requesting an additional $184,000 in general obligation bond funding for design right-of-way and to begin some construction, most likely just part of that signal. This funding is available in the 2017 Bike Enhancement Fund approved by the City Council on January 3rd of 2017. That fund is every 2 years in the CIP and is set up, if you've ever had a chance to look at that page in the CIP, for multiple path projects every 2 years. That's based on priorities of the City Council, the Bike Ped Advisory Board, and the Bicycle Master Plan. As we go through those, sometimes projects cost more, sometimes projects cost less. Our only goal with that budget was to get design started, which we had done. We had kind of hoped we would have the availability to get construction out of that too, but it's not happening based on what the other projects have cost. So right now, to finish this project, the funding is actually included in the 2025 budget and the CIP. We are working now and looking at the next CIP coming up. Staff, from our perspective, is going to recommend that funding for this project be sooner than 2025, but I don't know where that ends up within the decision matrix and the other priorities that are within the CIP. Regardless of that, we would ask for approval of design concept today, supplemental agreement number 1 to finish the design, and a revised budget so that we can also look at right-of-way acquisition. Adopt the amending resolution, authorize the necessary signatures. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Frying and Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Gary, on slide 10, if you could go back to that real quick. As part of this design review, would there be consideration for a westbound Zoo to right turn at Hoover dedicated lane?
We can certainly look at that. I think we evaluated the traffic counts already, and it did not show a warrant for that, but we can take another look and see.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just trying to follow seemed like there was a lot of pulling money from future CIPs. So the $700,000 to pay for it, that is in a 2025 budget, or it is not out there yet, or?
And I apologize for the confusion, because I know there's a lot of information. As of right now, the $700,000 for this project is included in the CIP in 2025. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We from a staff level, because of where we've gotten on this project and because of the path that's already been constructed from K96 down to 29th, we think that this has risen to a level of being a little bit more priority and looking at, especially pathways around the city. We're going to recommend in the new CIP that funding be allocated sooner. I don't know where that ends up. That's all I can do is make that recommendation, but looking at priorities, we would like to see that happen, but it may be that it stays in 2025.
Still coming from the funds designated for bicycle pathways.
That would be the plan. We have had some pathway projects that were pulled out separately within the CIP, and I'm not saying that would happen either, but that would be the goal.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out on the, and I think these bike paths are a great idea. I'm trying to figure out where our priority matrix is, because whenever we talk about everything else within the city, we talk about infill growth, and we talk about how we're pushing in forward, and this seems like it's stretching out toward an area with limited homes where, you know, a big push in District 4 we've had is where we've tried to push the Sunset Trail, which has been paid for mostly by volunteer dollars that come all the way from Garden Plain. We basically stop at 235, and we've tried to make connectivity to the new ballpark. So where would that fall in priority compared to something like this that seems like it's out kind of to a newer area, and it's sparsely populated compared to the more densely populated established areas we have?
Right. The Mayor, Vice Mayor, first of all, we're early in the CIP process, and so priorities haven't been established. And obviously, to move projects, you need to then, if you're going to move a project earlier, then something else has to give in order to be able to balance the CIP, unless our resources are greater than what we anticipated. The matrix involves a number of issues. When it comes to our bike path system, infill development alone, that's only one criteria. You have recommendations from the Bike and Ped Committee that gives you priorities, and connectivity is one of those priorities, and I think that's what Gary's responding to today is, in this case, connectivity between two significant park areas, one county facility, one city facility. All of those issues will be factored into it, and when we present the CIP, it will stay consistent with the matrix that the council adopted last year. And if there are any exceptions, we'll note those and the reasons why. And then that's why I anticipate that we'll have at least one retreat with the council to talk through all of that.
What is the other park that you're referencing?
Crystal Prairie Park and obviously Sedgwick County Park.
Do we have any improvements there now, or?
I'd say, no. This is, so it's future oriented.
So it's future park.
Right.
Well, we're digging the lake out now.
Right, but.
Again, we're really early in the process,
Okay.
so I don't want you to.
I'm just trying to figure out the priority.
Yep, and we'll have all that outlined for you.
Okay.
Councilmember Clayco?
I have a question, but just in response to Vice Mayor, I think it also is connectivity to the neighborhoods that are established out there already too, right?
Correct, especially since that other path is now being constructed from K96 to south of 29th. We have heard from a lot of people in the existing neighborhoods. We even had some petitions submitted asking for this project to move forward as soon as possible to provide connectivity for the area.
Yeah, okay. Because the park will be a little ways off. We do. So I have a question, Gary. How many right-of-way acquisitions are needed?
I think there's probably 4 or 5 total along Hoover.
And do you remember how many we reduced that? Because I know early on it was more than that, and then we reduced it.
There was 2 of them in particular where there was the most concern with proximity that we were able to move and so that we can build the path within an existing right-of-way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members, for allowing me to speak here briefly. Thank you, Gary, for your sharing what your project is. My name is David Karp, and I own and live in the residence at 2728 North Hoover, which would be a part of the slides that were shown there by Gary. I'm also here and for the benefit of my brother and my mother that live next door, as well as a small piece of farm property that is part of our farm to be impacted by this. I can simply say we simply, as landowners there, have no desire for a 10-foot wide concrete path in front of our homes and property. That would be nearly 10,000 square feet of concrete poured in our front lawns and along our property. We would not desire the loss of privacy that we would deal with people pedaling, walking, jogging across the front of our property. Additionally, as property owners, we would not want to bear the financial responsibility to pay for upkeep, for repairs as needed for that path, and especially for that path that has been noted it could be 10 years before this really reaches its ultimate goal. As well as property owners, we do not want to be exposed to the financial liability of somebody having an accident on that path and desiring compensation for that path. As well, we do not want to endure the financial loss of value to our property. I know when you read a lot about paths that these are an enhancement to property values. That is probably true when those paths are in the vicinity of your home or property. But when that path goes across your front lawn, I believe that is a negative to the value of our property. I believe it reduced significantly potential future buyers if at some point we wanted to move our properties. So as property owners, we would not want to accept the long-term depreciation of our property in order to really support the amenities of the new neighborhood, which was addressed. This is really an amenity for those new neighborhoods that are going in. And but those amenities come at the cost of those of us that are already there. And so, in view of these remarks, I would simply encourage you as council members, encourage you to reject this design concept of this multi-use path on North Hoover. I would urge that to think clearly on this and really require this path be placed within those communities that are experiencing the benefit from this path. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Any other speakers? If there's no other speakers, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Claycomb, turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I followed this process pretty closely, and staff has taken input and feedback at 2 DAB meetings. The first DAB meeting, there were a lot of questions, and so staff went back and worked on that and came back again. In the meantime, there were 2 neighborhood meetings, and I thank the Carps for being here today. Even though I don't think we were able to address all of their concerns, I do think that staff worked hard to answer the questions. Brought it back to the DAB. The DAB did support this path. The Bike and Ped Advisory Board supported this path. We have letters of support from 5 homeowners associations who, again, the path doesn't run right through their property, but it is connectivity for them. I appreciate staff researching the alternatives and providing results on that and working to reduce the right-of-way acquisitions. Weren't able to reduce those totally, but still were able to reduce those right-of-way acquisitions by 2. I expect continued efforts to address the concerns of the property owners as we move forward, and staff has committed to that there are things that we can do to help alleviate some of those concerns, perhaps not all of them, but some of them. So with all of that support, I'm going to move that the City Council approve the design concept, supplemental agreement number 1, and revised budget, and authorize the necessary signatures.
And I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. I do have one question, thinking through this. I'm going to ask the speaker to come back briefly, if Mr. Carp could come back to the podium.
So fast, Gary.
No one wants to hear from you. So I'm a little familiar with the property along there. In fact, I have a good friend who worked at what was known then as the Carp Farm there on Hoover Road. Is that the same Carp family that sold that acreage to the developer that's brought tons of houses and density and population, and is that a different Carp family?
Well, that's the same Carp family, but specifically it was not sold to the developer. It ended up in the developer's hands. It was really sold to Ritchie Corporation.
To harvest the sand, and I think Ritchie started harvesting the sand there, or maybe they sold it off before they started harvesting.
Yeah, Lafarge. They sold that to Lafarge.
Okay. All right. I was just curious if that was the Carp family farm, that same family.
It is correct.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Charter ordinance amending and repealing Section 2 of Charter Ordinance Number 192 and Sections 2, 4, and 5 of Charter Ordinance Number 206 pertaining to pawnbrokers and second-hand dealers.
Good morning, Mayor and council members, City Manager. I'm Captain Clay Germany with Wichita Police Department, and we're here today to talk about the amending and the repealing of certain sections of the Charter Ordinance 192. Oops. There we go. All right, the background for the ordinance itself, we're monitoring the pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers transactions. They are reported on a daily, and they help aiding efforts in locating stolen properties here in Wichita. Right now at this time, WPD and Leads Online, we're in the discussion of entering into a contract for new software for recovery of stolen property. This here would allow for the electronic reporting by pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers straight into Leads Online instead of them having to be reported directly to us at Wichita. This also will allow officers to search for items reportedly pawned and are reported stolen locally and also in other jurisdictions. The City of Wichita was contacted by representatives of the Eco ATM. The Eco ATM specializes in recycling used cell phones and other electronics. Eco ATM also purchases electronics through kiosks and interacts remotely with patrons selling the items. The Eco ATM was prevented earlier on with entering Wichita market due to the way our ordinances was written. Our current ordinance provisions regarding holding periods here in the City of Wichita, there was also a requirement that the items be held within this jurisdiction. Pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers, this amendment will require that all pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers are reported electronically within a one-day business. Pawnbrokers right now, they report within a one-day business time. Secondhand dealers report once a week. These transactions and information will be directly loaded into Leads Online instead of having to come through the Wichita Police Department. There is no cost to the businesses for inputting this information into Leads, getting that software. Leads Online actually works with them in making sure that they understand how to report through them. The Eco ATM and any kiosk business owner, law enforcement will be given access to these kiosks within 24 hours of a request so that we can search for stolen items or any that we need to review for any recorded periods. If an item is reported stolen, and removed from the city, the kiosk company is then required to return the stolen items to the police department at its own expense upon a request of law enforcement. We have Bonnie Garcia, who is Director of the Government Affairs through Eco ATM. She's also here, and she's also wanting to give a short presentation about the company also. Would you like to have her now?
That would be fine by us.
Good morning, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Bonnie Garcia, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for Eco ATM. I represent the company nationally on local ordinances and state law changes that are needed in order to recognize the new marketplace. You already know customers can walk into the store to make a purchase. They also can now order items or sell items on their phone or through a computer, or interact themselves with a self-checkout counter or a kiosk. You may be more familiar with our sister companies, Redbox and Coinstar. Eco ATM is specifically designed to work with major retailers within a store space, very similar placement to where a Redbox machine or kiosk are already located. We have over 3,500 machines throughout the United States, and overseas, we just started operating in England. I just learned a very important statistic last week, and that was that more than 1.5 billion cell phones were sold last year around the United States, and less than 2% of those are recycled or reused or repurposed. Our company specializes in buying devices directly from consumers that are old or broken, as most consumers recycle or step up their cell phone every 18 to 24 months. Our company works with over 1,500 local jurisdictions and state police agencies across the United States, so we've instituted a national model for how we report and how we store our items. Our processing facility is located in Louisville, Kentucky, and as of last month, we have purchased more than 20 million devices directly from consumers. Here in Kansas, we've been operating for about 3 years, and we have collected over 111,000 devices and paid consumers more than $2.5 million. The reporting system that we currently use in your state is Leads Online, so this would allow us to be recognized as a new marketplace. So on behalf of the technology industry, we thank you for taking a look at your state and city codes. And it also allows us to set a strict protocol so that anybody that comes into this space is also doing the same thing. But more importantly, it protects your consumers, because whether they're in your city or in any other city across the United States, the information would be rapidly available to law enforcement, and those of us that are in the space of buying any devices can quickly turn over any devices of interest to them. So I'm here to answer any questions, and thank you so much for allowing me to present.
Questions for the speaker? Yes, Councilmember Blanco.
Thank you for being here today. You mentioned that Redbox and Coinstar were is Gazelle also part of your company?
Yes, Eco ATM is the in-store presence, which is the kiosk, and then we also have an online platform, which is Gazelle. I hate to say it, but I am in the demographic over 50 club, where I prefer to deal with transactions in person. And so the younger millennials, that trade in their phones every 12 to 18 months are comfortable selling online and then waiting a couple of weeks for their payments.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, who's not in that club yet.
I just wanted to check my math here. You said 111,000 phones at $2.5 million, so the average price is around $22 a phone?
That's correct. Okay. What most consumers turn in is a broken or old cell phones. It's not what we're thinking, the smartphones, which are an iPhone 10 or 10X, an iPhone 6, an iPhone 5. And the question sometimes is, what do we do with these cell phones? Well, we recycle cell phones for parts. If we do less mining, then we're protecting Mother Earth. 4 cell phones are the equivalent of 1 pound of electronic waste. So 20 million cell phones is equivalent to 5 million pounds of electronic waste that doesn't make it into local landfills. So we are partners with law enforcement to protect consumers, but also with local jurisdictions to prevent the leaching of carcinogens into your local landfills.
So I'm just trying to understand the cross-reference earlier to make sure that someone's not just stealing phones and getting $22 or something. Is it cross-reference with like who you have your phone service with, or how exactly do they?
Yes,
make
sir.
sure
I sent out earlier some informational brochures, and in there is some information on how it works. So, for example, if a consumer comes to a kiosk, they're immediately told that the information that we collect will be reported to law enforcement. That's the first thing that happens. If they decide to move forward with the transaction, it will then ask them to present their phone for testing. This is where technology comes in, and also a live operator is monitoring the transaction. A plug will come out, and they will plug in their phone, and it will interrogate the phone not only to see what condition it's in, but it will also run a background check on the phone. And cell phones manufacturers have moved away from serial numbers. It's now IMEI and MEIDs. These are manufacturer serial numbers that are not repeated and are on a reporting platform. So as it runs the background check on that serial number, if the consumer has reported the phone lost to his carrier or has reported the phone lost or stolen to the police department, there will be a hit in the system through Leads Online. We will decline the sale at that time.
What's the window for that?
How often it uploads into the system?
No, like how soon do you need to report your phone stolen?
Well, this is how we sometimes end up with a stolen phone in our inventory, for example. As I'm standing here today, if I left my phone out in the parking lot and somebody broke into my car, chances are that they could run to a pawnbroker or secondhand dealer and sell that phone immediately. There would not be a hit. However, Leads Online and other reporting platforms are important because within an hour or two, I'm going to walk into the police department, report my car broken into, my phone stolen, and the Leads Online platform updates 4 to 6 times a day. So by the end of the day, wherever that phone is located, not just in your city, but anywhere in the nation, there will be a hit on the system.
So do you have a picture of the person or anything like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So in addition to that, every transaction, and I'm just going to hold this up from the brochure that you have, the transaction report will include a copy of a state ID of the person that presented the phone. They must be over the age of 18. The kiosk is designed to read that identification to make sure it has the correct watermarks and those descriptors that are required in your state identification. We use the same reader that they use at the international border crossing. So it's much more secure than even TSA at the airport. And so it reads the devices. Online, there is an agent that is monitoring that entire transaction. She will match the person standing in front of her with the ID. If the person is wearing a hat or glasses, she will ask them to take those off. And if that ID is a valid ID and it's the same person, then we'll move forward with the transaction. The phone that you've already put inside the kiosk, it will have a picture of the phone front and back. It will have interrogated the device for the electronic serial number. The report also includes the location and the time where the phone was sold. And then, pursuant to your local or state law, we will also collect the fingerprint. And that's all part of the sales report. In addition to that, the machine is designed to take 3 high-resolution photographs of the person presenting the sale. At the urging of law enforcement, our law enforcement team worked with our engineering team to build a 3rd camera. When we collect the thumbprint of the person presenting the phone for sale, there's a camera attached to that portion of the kiosk to ensure it's your arm putting the fingerprint there and not somebody standing around the corner. It also does a wide-angle view, so if you're under duress, at gunpoint or something, it's in real time, so we can alert law enforcement about it as well. And I have to tell you, I'm extremely proud of the security features that this kiosk has. The person that shot up the Pulse nightclub in Florida a few years ago, the terrorist, sold us his own phone before that incident for $9. And as a result of that, we were able to gather information and share it with the FBI. And it was not a stolen phone, but it was a phone that was of interest to law enforcement and actually of interest to national security. And because we report all sales, regardless of value, that phone was $9. we were able to learn a little bit more about him and his intentions.
So the public probably needs to clear their phone before they go do that anyway, just because of protected passwords and stuff?
When you're walking up to the machine, it will tell you to clear your phone.
Okay.
And if you do not, we don't interrogate the phone and look for anything on it. We hold the phone intact in its original condition for 30 days. And if it becomes of interest to law enforcement, we turn it over to law enforcement, whether it's stolen or of interest to law enforcement. Because at that time, you've already sold or signed over your authority. There's an electronic signature attached. So we're able to surrender it with no problem and no legal challenges.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
Great
to
line
just
of
answer that
questioning.
question, at the end of 30 days, if there's anything stored on the phone, it's going to be wiped, completely clean. We don't go through it to see what's in your wedding pictures or your baby pictures. It's just automatically wiped.
Mayor, you think this would be an opportunity to maybe trade in your flip phone?
Is there any value left in my 2003 BlackBerry?
We also, I want to say, because
She ignored
electronic
that
waste
question.
is such a challenge, we also work with groups like the Child Abuse Council, Boys and Girl Scouts. They do electronic recycling programs, and we monetize that recycling effort for them as well.
All right, any other questions? Any other part of the presentation?
We just urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our expected outcome is that we're able to have faster identification of suspects, also improve the prosecuted outcome, decrease in theft and burglaries within the citywide, also improve techniques in linking of multiple crime scenes and crime types. We are hoping and we recommend that our pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers, we recommend that we change the ordinance to require both pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers to report electronically regardless of the total number of transactions, and for all transactions to be reported by the next day. Currently, our licensed pawnbrokers are required to report transactions electronically and only if the business averages more than 100 transactions per month. Secondhand dealers, as I explained, they only report transactions once a week right now. With the Eco ATM and kiosk business owners, we're hoping to amend the ordinance, which will allow 10 business days to report electronically. We work with both ATM and also the law department to come up with this because we know that they are shipping it outside of our jurisdiction, so we're requiring that 10 days in order for them, if they're needing to gather the EIM number, giving them a little bit more time in order to gather that, to report it for the purchasing under this business model, and that it can also be held off sites. Right now, our ordinances requires all items that are sold to pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers to be held within our jurisdiction. With these kiosks, they will be shipping them outside of our jurisdiction. You want to say something?
Take your questions if you have any.
Questions? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I had one, now I have a few more. So I read through this, and I have not found a penalty for not following the ordinance. What is that penalty?
Well, we can issue a citation for pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers who do not follow the ordinance that we have, and it's just issuing a citation warning them that they're needing to come within compliance. After that, we can then look at their licenses and for them to continue to retain their license. Okay. And that should be in the ordinance.
Okay, maybe I missed it. I'll go back and reread it. And then the other question, and I read through this, so maybe I misunderstood. So we're looking to change or amend the charter ordinance only for electronics, not for anything. So if someone stole my chainsaw or something like that, this wouldn't apply.
Well, basically what we're asking for is to amend the ordinance so that pawnbrokers now, they report electronically, and that comes to the Wichita Police Department. We then have our pawn unit place that information inside NCIC and check just for Wichita in itself. What this ordinance will require them to do is input that into Leads Online. That is a national reporting system. It then checks all throughout the United States, 47 different other states, which then can then return back to us. Right now, because of the only way that the reporting is you have to be law enforcement to report it into NCIC. That's the only way we get the hits. When pawnbrokers report into Leads Online, they're able to send us that information because the pawnbrokers are reporting it in there.
But it would only be for electronics, not like lawnmowers?
Yes, it's for anything that's pawned.
It's for any property. Right now, when we get the electronic reports, they're in a spreadsheet. So to proactively go in there and look for them would take a lot of time. This thing takes all that out of the equation. So if we had like your chainsaw stolen, we would know like right away, instead of having to spend 10 hours looking for it in 10,000 rows of data.
Okay. So it just changes the way they record property
That is correct, sir. It is.
Yes.
Okay. And then my last question is on, I think it's page 2, we were looking at the types of documentation that could be used. So if someone doesn't have a driver's license, is it social security card, birth certificate? Will that be defined so that they know, like, is it a tax return? What types of documents could actually be used?
I believe it says in the ordinance, it says a state-issued ID.
Well, it said state or maybe federal, but it didn't say what specifically. So sometimes folks won't take a tax return even though it's federal because you might have moved. And I think it'd be easier to clarify for some people if they don't have all the documentation necessary, what they know they can use for that.
I think that'll be something that we would have to look at that as far as adding that to the ordinance itself also.
Okay, because it says 2 different documents, but it didn't say specific. So I would hate to see someone show up with, they don't have an ID, maybe their birth certificate's gone, so they show their W-2s, but that's not accepted. Just some more clarification on that.
Okay.
Well, we'd have to defer to legal on that. I'm not sure W-2s would be a qualified legal document for identification.
No, but it does say one piece of government issue.
Sharon DeGraff, City Law Department. The purpose for number 2 is that it be a photo identification so that we make sure that the person pawning the item matches the documentation for the item. So I have concerns that if I showed up with a W-2, that could be my W-2, it could be my sister's W-2. So I think this is to help law enforcement know that I am the person that pawned that item. And in reference to your question on penalties, this is an ordinance that has a penalty of up to $1,000 in 6 months. That's not in what you have before you because that's not a section that's being amended. So you're only seeing the parts of the charter ordinance that we're changing.
Any other questions, Brandon?
No, I did notice that by 2021 we'll be using fingerprints for identification.
Yes, we're asking that also comes into play where all pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers would also identify with a fingerprint.
That was all, Mayor.
Any other questions before we go out to the public? All right, we'll go out to the public.
Thank you.
Anyone that would like to address the council, please approach.
Hi, my name is Bruce Harris. I'm a pawnbroker here in Wichita. I've been in business for 40 years here in town and been a member of the National Pawnbrokers Association for over 10 years. And I've done a lot of things for this ordinance when they first put the first ordinance out to what it is becoming now. Nationally, what goes on with Leads Online is a lot of things. So I do have a brochure I'd like to hand out to you guys that gives you all the information we have from the National Pawnbrokers Association. I hand it to you. This information here you can read now or later, if you would, on it, is talks about Leads Online and things that go on and how they do their business. It is a for-profit company, is what it is, and they do, even if they do it for free now, eventually over the United States, they start charging. When they start charging, they charge a transaction fee. In Kansas, we're not allowed to charge a transaction fee to the consumer. And when they find a way to get to the consumer, and those fees will roll down to them, Our smallest loan we do today is $20, and we provide services for people for small cash loans for thousands and thousands of people. That'll become $100 before we could actually make a profit. And below that, we won't be able to, and so we will not provide the services. The people below there, which we service hundreds of or lots of, will not get service in the future. Starts out free, ends up costing, because it is a for-profit company. The Wichita Police Department does a fantastic job. They do things now. We report electronically every day. The information goes straight to them in a format that can go straight to Leads Online, so you don't have to mess with it. Or a software company does develop that software to be able to be done. And the biggest part is the information for, not for a purchase, but for a pawn. That's the customer's name, address, phone number, color of eyes, everything about that person, social security number, the whole thing about him, which is private information that doesn't need to be out unless there's a hit on the item. With Leads Online, they have all that information for profiling, for all kinds of things they could do, which is improper and wrong to do, and actually, I think it's very improper to be done. We'd like to, with the MPAs, which we do have here now, states that they'd like to not give the personal information, which we have and will have and continue to hold for many years, and offer that up once there's a hit on the item. Currently, we just volunteer and give the whole item, all the information to the police department. But if it goes to an outside source that's funded and stuff from even overseas, this information can be hacked anywhere in the world, which is our personal information for our customers here in Wichita, Kansas. I don't think they need it. And I'm open for any questions you guys might have of me.
Bruce, are there any alternatives to Leads?
What we're doing currently is alternative to Leads.
What? Pardon me? What?
What we're doing currently for the pawn shops is very much a good alternative for Leads, and our software can provide them with the information to put straight onto Leads very easily, that we can supply the police department with that information or with that technology.
But right now, we're not requiring it to be entered electronically. We're just...
Yes, we are. I mean, well, pawn shops are and all do, and they are required to, and they provide that to them, which is it just flows through to them and goes straight to Leads Online.
Okay. Councilmember Claycomb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Harris, for being here today. I have a question. So you said that information's collected that's not needed unless a piece of property is stolen, like social security numbers.
The personal information for the consumer.
Right. So how would you know if you should collect that or not? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like,
we do collect on everybody no matter what. Okay. And by law for state of Kansas, we do it. State of Kansas has laws for pawn shops. Wichita has another 64 pages of ordinances we add to that, which we're happy to do, and we do very, very well at. And I've been here for 40 years. It was on a piece of paper. Once a month, it'd stop. I'd pick it up when I started.
Yeah.
It has evolved quite a bit, and for good reasons. But the information is readily available and stored and held, and if anything would have to be stored and held. But the personal information for consumers, that your cousin or son or somebody comes in and borrows $20 on an item, now they're in a database and can be profiled. So that's not anybody else. The banks don't have to do this. That's not private information. It's public. With Leads Online, it becomes a public information, and that is wrong.
Yeah. So you're suggesting it's held in your system, but only released if something is stolen.
If something gets a hit on it.
And with Leads Online, it would all be released into this database.
Yes. Yes,
okay.
It would.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions.
And good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I forgot. This is my first time up here.
Thanks. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? No other speakers. We'll bring the discussion back to the bench. Question for any of the officers. How do we address the concerns of both Leads potentially charging and releasing information?
Well, I know that there are several law enforcement agencies that looked at trying to figure out a way to pay for Leads Online. They then designed a way that they could tax the transactions. That was one of the things that was brought to us, as if we wanted to have it, but we decided against that because it should not tax pawnbrokers or the citizens. We developed a way where we could pay for the system within our budget. That in itself is the only as far as payment goes to Leads Online. It's not a cost to the pawnbrokers. It's not a cost to the citizens.
How do we ensure it won't be a cost next year?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, we enter into a contract, so we stipulate and negotiate that out, but we don't, I think if we ever arrived at that point, we'd have to revisit.
What's the
We don't-
length of term of the contract?
1 year, we renew every year.
So next year, they could alter the contract and it changes.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, Wichita, it's kind of late coming to the table on this. Kansas City has it, they've had it for years. Topeka, Hutch, and I'm fairly certain, based on conversation with Kansas City, they've had it for a number of years, and they've never had to pass the cost.
Are they all using the same leads?
They're using Leads Online. And just to kind of illustrate, when we started talking to Leads Online, they started giving us a report of property that was stolen in Wichita and ended up somewhere else. We actually had a farm that ended up in Utah, if I remember right. And the only way we knew about that was because Leads Online had a Wichita resident go clear to Utah to sell a stolen item. So it is the industry standard. It's a proven company, and I'm fairly confident that they'll meet our needs.
I mean, I can certainly see value in carrying it out nationwide. I would have some concern if we're only trying to hold it within the boundaries of Wichita or hold it within the boundaries of one pawn shop until there's a hit. You wouldn't know if there's a hit on something like someone taking it all the way to Utah.
Yes.
So, difficult compromise. Vice Mayor?
Do we have any idea what percentage of items that are sold in a pawn shop end up coming up stolen?
Currently, we keep, every month has about 10,000 transactions. So unless we arrest somebody and say, hey, can we look at their pawn history, we have to proactively go into the database and search it. This new Leads Online does not rely on the human factor or the human interface. If it hits on a serial number, we'll know. So we'll give you a fair answer if we do go this way to say this percentage of property was actually stolen. I think we'd get a pretty good idea after a couple months.
Can we ask Mr. Harris what his numbers, what he's seen in his years?
Bruce, come up to the microphone.
Nationwide, that number is 0.2% turns out stolen, and over 93% of my customers that come in and borrow money pick up their merchandise, and it isn't stolen because they do pick it up. The other ones are sometimes selling it. There's a lot of ways that they don't come back and get it, but 90+% of the people do pick up their merchandise. They use it for a short-term loan, which is now compromised by the Freedom of Information Act, or getting that information out there to everybody, and for profiling for all kinds of reasons, which is stated in those papers on there. So it's very little, if not Wichita, probably close to none. If anything's stolen, it goes online. It goes to a flea market. It goes to a gas station. It doesn't come to a pawn shop. We will take your picture. We will have you sign a statement that is you're a true and lawful owner, known for so many days and months. And then NCIC, every night that goes to them, it goes nationwide, every day, every serial number of every item we take in currently.
So how does it disseminate nationwide, Bruce?
NCIC, when they get a database to the police department, they put it out on the NCIC every night.
Okay.
So if it went to Utah, you'd still get it back. I had a gun that was stolen from my store 15 years ago. I got it back last year. It showed up on the NCI hit somewhere else.
Okay. Any other questions, Vice Mayor? Councilmember Fry?
Thank you. So I just want to be clear, and this is for staff. Thank you, Bruce. How much are we paying Leads Online for this system? Because they're getting compensated somehow.
Yes. So, yeah, staff. You're not staff yet, Bruce.
Oh, I thought you were telling me I wasn't staff. So right now, the contract is calling for, I believe, $37,000 annually. Yes.
Okay. And you're saying in other cities, they have not seen that increase, that cost passed on to consumers?
Some cities, It just depends by city, but some cities do not pass it
Right.
to consumers.
But with only a
Now,
one-year contract, we can't guarantee
yes.
that.
The other benefit is, sir, we actually ran the numbers for larcenies and burglaries for the past 10 years. We've seen a substantial increase in both categories. I think this would help us use technology to reduce the full-time
Right.
employee
So
time.
I totally get that, and I appreciate the idea of having more frequent electronic reporting. I guess I'm troubled by the potential cost that could be passed on, and then again, data that isn't necessarily needed because the item isn't stolen, getting in a database that, maybe it's Big Brother, I don't know, but I can see that concern.
If I may, sir, just to alleviate it, if you make a report of stolen property, we take your name, date of birth, and report that associated with your property.
Right.
So when they report it electronically, it's still out there because it's required now.
Right,
So there's really no change, I think.
Right, but for the customer that's just making a short-term loan, all that information is part of this transaction?
I think it does not apply to loans, it applies to property. If there's property associated with that loan, yes.
Right. Councilmember Claycomb?
So can we get, I just need a little bit of clarity on what happens now or could happen now, because I think Mr. Harris said that now the data could be directly fed into Leads Online, and that NCIC, currently the data's in there, so.
To kind of paint the picture, basically, if somebody reports a stolen property, all that data gets reported to Topeka, to the FBI NCIC computer. The FBI holds that data and then releases that to Leads Online, and that builds their database, and it's pushed out to all the departments that are subscribers to Leads Online. That's how they get the serial numbers.
So it's still getting to Leads Online through?
Yeah, through the FBI, correct.
So what does, yeah.
So, to continue to paint that picture, right now, here in the city of Wichita, our pawn shop brokers and secondhand, they report the information, and it comes directly to us, to our pawn shop, and they then run it through NCIC. If someone takes an item from Wichita and takes it to Oklahoma and pawns it in Oklahoma, we don't get to know that because the pawn shop, if they're reporting it to Leads Online in Oklahoma, we don't get that information back because we're not a part of Leads Online. If a law enforcement officer has contact and has probable cause to run that information through NCIC, then we know. But it's only through the law enforcement interaction. What this does is allow all that information fed into Leads Online, and then it comes back to us so that we know without having to have that law enforcement interaction. It gives us a heads up that we have an item in Utah, we have an item in Washington, D.C., and then that way we can contact them in order to get the property back to the owner.
So did I understand you correctly? There are some agencies that's taking the NCIC lists of property and downloading that to Leads?
No. What happens is NCIC, the database is collected on a daily. Whenever they enter anything that's stolen, it's entered on a daily. What NCIC does is it releases it to Leads Online. If you subscribe to Leads Online then checks it, and they send it out to you if you subscribe to Leads Online. If you don't subscribe to Leads Online, pawn shops that's inputting to Leads Online, you never know about it.
But NCIC is subscribing to Leads Online.
NCIC is releasing that information
to Leads Online.
To Leads Online. I don't know if they subscribe to it, but
So
they
it's-
release that information to
So it's
them.
still getting released to Leads?
Yes.
We're just taking out the middleman in this case.
What it does, it releases the serial number to tell, hey, there was an item stolen in Wichita, and then it's incumbent upon Wichita detectives to contact that agency to say, hey, can you follow up for me? There was a gun that showed up in your jurisdiction. So it's.
There's nothing confusing about that.
No.
Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. So I actually did have some questions for you, young lady. So This document that we were provided, the National Pawnbrokers Association, brings more questions for me. So saying that you store customer information for indefinite periods of time without expungement after a period established by lawmakers, you may release information without having a warrant for that just because maybe law enforcement wants it. Can you kind of respond to some of that? Is that the case, that you release that information without warrants, without checks? And my other concern, even though you said you were more secure than TSA, is in this day and age of cyber warfare, what happens if you all get hacked and all this information is released?
Those are all good questions. So let me start backwards because I think we got a little confused with Leads Online. As private enterprise, we cannot load information onto the national NCIC database. So we use a third party to report sales. Where the officer is explaining that if they have a subscription, they could look at national sales. So that gives them access to a national database. As a private party company, we have to have data security protocols in place. And we carry an ISO certification on that data. So it's encrypted when we collect it at the point of sale, and it's stored within our system encrypted. We do not sell or have a third-party contract with anybody else. The only information we collect, it's required by your state or local laws to report that sale to law enforcement. So I hope that answers that question. In terms of the warrants and subpoenas, a good example would be the terrorist that shot up the county building in San Bernardino, California. He had his own phone on his person, and the FBI asked Apple to unlock that phone so they could see who his associates were and what his transactions. Apple refused to do that because they were protecting the technology and the privacy of the customer. In our case, when you present an item for sale, we tell you repeatedly during that transaction that this information will be reported to law enforcement, that the information you provide will be part of that report to law enforcement. And when you sell the item, because we don't loan like a pawn shop, we buy it direct, that you're transferring the ownership of that item to us. And you sign electronically that you accept those conditions. There's also other terms and conditions through that sale. So once we own that property, we have the right to do with it what we want. What we have done nationally is we've established a standard of 30 days hold. Your local ordinance may be 10 days. In another portion of your state, it might be 5 days. California, just this year, went down to 3 days. But because we know that law enforcement is still in many jurisdictions working against the clock or a paper-driven system, nationally we hold it for 30 days. So it still remains intact.
So you get rid of it after 30 days?
After 30 days, the grading on that device warrants what's going to happen to it. If it's going to be used for parts, or if we're going to recondition it and resell it back to a carrier. When you break your phone, you have an iPhone 7, you get a reconditioned phone, it comes from that wholesaler, or if it's sold to a wholesaler for reuse. Many phones overseas don't have the smartphone capabilities or internet capabilities, and they're strictly used for phones, so it would end up in that marketplace.
Okay, well, that's kind of why I use a Droid, because those don't break that much. So if there is someone who has a warrant, doesn't know it, changed addresses, and you have this information now because they came in upon a phone, law enforcement could, since you changed it, turn that over to law enforcement. They could now see so-and-so has this warrant, they have a new address, and then go arrest them. Is that a possibility?
I don't know on the law enforcement end. I think that's a question for law enforcement. What we're saying is we don't require a warrant for us to surrender a property that we own. However, we've had many high-risk cases. For example, I was sharing earlier in Michigan, we had a law enforcement officer killed in the line of duty, and that person sold his own phone into the system. So he was of interest to law enforcement. They ran his name through the system and, to see if he's had any interaction with law enforcement anywhere in the United States. And they saw that this person sold us a phone. They asked us to surrender the phone. In that case, it's a law enforcement active case. Of course, we're going to work with your city attorney's office and your county or state prosecutors to do all of the documentation needed before we turn over anything.
Well, I think in those two examples, you definitely should do that.
Of course.
But my concern is, and this is not necessarily a question for our law enforcement department. It's just that if you give all of this information over and you have this profile on the individual, and I can think of several people who've had warrants and didn't know if they moved. Maybe they were in an apartment 6 months and moved into a house. If they don't know they have a warrant because it went to the wrong address, and now, again, not your intent, but you're just giving this information over to law enforcement, there is the possibility where they see, here's this individual, we haven't been able to find them, now we have this new address because of the system, and they pawn something. Not necessarily the property, so it's not about the phone or the laptop. It's just that information that they now have. That's something that could happen.
I don't know that to be the case. We've bought 20 million phones across the United States. That would be the first time something like that has happened, that a police department would come to our inventory to do a phishing expedition. It's always been the case that whenever we've interacted with law enforcement, and it's 0.5% of the 20 million phones that we've ever interacted with law enforcement on, it's because it's of interest to them in a high-profile case. Or it ended up in our inventory incorrectly. We've never had a law enforcement agency contact us because somebody had a child support warrant or a traffic warrant. We're not a tool to be used in that way. We report because we're required to with law enforcement. And there was a question earlier about the transaction fees. I just happened to work in Arizona this last week where transaction fees were charged for pawn items and secondhand dealer items, and that happened during an economic downturn. The cities imposed a transaction fee to help the law enforcement, cover some of the new technology. Now we've actually gone backwards. They have actually eliminated that transaction fee because they were able to see that there were some cost savings when they moved to a paperless system. So now you have a system where your police department is having to go out to the pawn shops or to the secondhand dealers or meet them at the desk, take those paper slips, have a law enforcement clerk enter that information into the system, upload it onto the NCIC. So there's a loss of days and time and manpower, and what Leads Online does for you, or BWI Rapid to Pawn Crawler or other systems that are out there, is give you a look at where inventory that may be missing in your city has ended up anywhere nationally. So in a matter of minutes, you are able to track that information down, and you're able to also reduce your operating expenses and manpower and get the rightful owner his property quicker.
I appreciate that answer. The previous answer kind of handled my concerns about number one, because number one really kind of talked to what you said, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clayco.
This is for staff. Can you, or maybe the law department, I don't know which, talk to us about how Leads Online secures or has safeguards against hacking of the database?
We asked him to be here today, but as far as the encryption and stuff, I know that it goes in as encryption. We also had concerns as far as hacking and stuff, because we thought coming into our system or us getting information. So there's always a concern, but I know that it is encrypted.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. This question for staff as well. On the green sheet, it talks about being able to generate a modest amount of additional revenue depending upon the number of new licenses issued. I'm assuming this is related to the automated kiosk and Eco ATM, that they would have to have a license. Is that for each kiosk or just one for the company?
It should be for the company that I know of. I guess that's something we would really have to look at as far as the licenses, and I guess we would need to talk with the law, refer it to the law.
I believe it's just one license per company within the city that operates within the city, as far as I know.
And we did that at the behest of finance, because they said, hey, put that in there.
So that's not going to be a lot of revenue.
Instead of moderate and modest.
That's very modest.
Just want to make sure what on the existing pawnbrokers.
Robert, I guess my concern is there seems to be more questions that continue to come up Is there any sense of urgency to move this forward today? Can we pause and encourage staff to sit down again with some pawnbrokers? Obviously, Bruce is one of the larger ones in town. See if there's some kind of a compromise that potentially could be worked out. I share some of his concerns with potential release of data, and I mean, data breaches happen all the time, even with secured systems. We had someone break into City Hall's data in the last 5 years. Data breaches happen.
Mayor, you kind of beat me to the punch. I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind delaying this for a few weeks. What I heard from council in terms of issues that we'd like to talk about is the security of the system. What does Leeds do to secure their data? History of rate increases in other cities that use their service. And also, I think we need to do a better job of explaining what the current system is in terms of how we get data and where it goes, and then what would happen to that in the new scenario.
Right.
So we'll outline that for you as well. And then no problem visiting with Bruce and possibly other pawnbrokers. I think I'd especially like to talk to Bruce in terms of making sure we address some of his concerns on data.
So we have another council meeting coming up on the 16th of April. That's a possibility. If we need more time, you're probably going to look at pushing it into the first week of May.
Yeah, we don't have a problem doing it. Yeah. Yes, I would like to do that. That gives us enough time,
Yeah,
not just to gather this, but also to.
Why don't we so I'm going to make a motion to defer this at this point to the first council meeting in May.
Second.
Are there any other discussions? We have a motion to defer it to the first council meeting in May. We have a second. Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. I always like it when I can beat you to the punch. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing for repair or removal of dangerous and unsafe structures.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. Chris Labrum, MABCD, presenting 3 structures today for condemnation by the city based on their status as dangerous and unsafe. To begin with, we've got 714 North Minneapolis. This is a 1-story frame dwelling, about 30 by 54 feet in size. It is vacant and open. It's also a duplex. Vacant and open, has a badly worn and sagging roof in several areas, composition roof. It's got holes. It's got some rotted wood trim. Soffits and fascia are also rotting. At the time that this home became vacant, the owner's grandson expressed his intent to demo the house and possibly rebuild on the lot, but we haven't seen any action with that, and we haven't heard much back from him recently. So our expectation in this case, and as you can see, we've got a lot of interior damage here, as well as the rot to the roof and other areas. Our hope here is that by proceeding with the condemnation process and actually putting that tight timeline on it, that the owner will come back into the picture and go ahead and take care of it themselves. But if they don't, we're starting to have, obviously, growing nuisance issues with this home and a growing concern, especially based on it being open. We have had some police activity at the house. Most of that was actually while it was still occupied, and some of that was from some fairly serious issues with violence and firearms. All right, the taxes are actually current on this address. But again, our understanding is that the owner's original intent was to demo this themselves, but then they've taken no action. So moving on to 1202 North Mathewson Avenue. This home is a 1.5-story frame dwelling, approximately 25 by 46 feet in size. It is also vacant and open. Of main concern here is the shifting and cracking concrete block foundation. It also has a rotted, some rotted and missing woodlap siding, and the composition roof is beginning to rot. It's sagging and starting to cave in. It's badly worn with holes. The taxes on this property are delinquent going back to 2010. That is to the amount of $6,290.55. That includes multiple assessments from my department. Also, 3 of those assessments are from this year. We have a growing number of nuisance and abatement actions, reports, and cases on this. They actually total 17, so I won't read all of those. A big concern here is also that is beginning to grow as an illegal dump site. So the review of this one yesterday showed actually quite a bit of additional debris from the pictures that we have here for the presentation. Also, no permits, no action has been taken on this. Originally, this case began in November of 2017 and went to the Board of Code Standards and Appeals on January 7th of this year. And again, we haven't seen much owner involvement on that one. The last one is 2310 East Aloma. And this is a structure that was badly fire damaged. We have no insurance and no insurance proceeds associated with this home. It's a 1-story frame dwelling, 38 by 48 feet in size, has been vacant for approximately a year. As you can see from that picture, the fire destroyed most of the roof and attic area and has started to sag and is open to a great extent, especially on the back side of the home. You will see this case has been open since May 15th of 2017. No repairs have been made. Taxes are delinquent for 2017 and 2018 at a cost of $2,196.63. Now we have no permits, and again, no engineer's assessment or many of the things that would have to be done with this. Most likely the house would be stated as non-repairable. It would be a matter of whether the owner or ourselves remove it. This case went before the Board of Code Standards and Appeals on January 7th. And again, you can see from these that it is a severely damaged home. So it is the recommendation of staff that City Council close the public hearing, adopt the resolution declaring the buildings to be dangerous and unsafe structures, accept the Board of Code Standards and Appeals recommendation to proceed with condemnation, allowing 10 days to start and 10 days to complete that removal of the structure. Any extensions of the time granted would be contingent on all taxes being paid and current as of today, as well as the structure being secured as of today, and that it would be kept secured as well as the premise remain mowed and free of debris as of today until the structures are either are maintained, renovated, or removed. I failed to add earlier also that, to my knowledge, none of the property owners are present today. With that, I will gladly stand for any questions.
So I'll ask also, is there anyone in attendance here today to represent any of these properties? Okay. Which one? Okay, the last one. Councilmember Johnson, do you want to take any of these up individually? You want to lump them together? Since we have one person here that would like to represent the last property, do you want to address the first two as a...
Yes, I would like to address the first two and then leave an opportunity to hear from him on the third.
Is there anyone here for 714 North Minneapolis or 1202 North Mathewson? Okay, doesn't appear to be anyone. Councilmember Johnson, I will hand it over to you. Before I do, you mentioned, at least I caught that on 1202 Mathewson, that the taxes haven't been paid since 2010. When did you start having violations on that property, and why did it take 9 years to bring it to us?
So, Mr. Mayor, we began, we went into condemnation on November 9th of 2017. Violations on this property with us go back to 2011. So it has been a long time in this process. Why, can't answer as to why it has not made it to tax sale yet.
Legally, it can go to tax sale after how many years?
5.
I believe 3, I believe.
3?
3 with an early
I think.
tax sale.
So this is part of our community's frustration and part of why we've been trying to work on solutions at the state, because at the end of the day, this infringes on property rights owners that live all the way around this property.
Yep.
And that's our frustration, and oftentimes you see it get to this point where it's terribly dilapidated, it's unsafe. I mean, heaven forbid neighborhood kids would get in there because there's not ways to secure it when it gets this bad, and so terribly frustrating to see it, and I don't know why it takes so long to address these. I guess it just adds to the frustration. Councilmember Johnson, before I get too frustrated, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I also share your frustration on this. I would like to take the staff's recommended action on 714 North Minneapolis Avenue, which is a duplex, and 1202 North Mathewson Avenue.
I will second that. We have a motion and a second to take staff recommended action. And any other discussion on those two? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0, and we'll let you take up the last item. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to hear from the property owner at 2310 East Aloma.
John Lunsford. I currently live at 822 South Green Street in Wichita. I moved out here with my company about 5 years ago and was not planning on staying in Wichita. Ended up requesting to stay and make Wichita my home. I am a Vietnam era veteran, and this month I joined the ranks of the senior citizens. A friend of mine owned this property, and I'm currently renting a home. He had rented it out, and there was I guess a domestic quarrel or something, and the husband of the family set the addition on fire. So he debated repairing the home, and then decided that he wasn't going to do it, and offered it to me to repair on my own. I do have experience in rebuilding and so forth. I've worked in construction previously. And so I purchased the property because I need a place to retire. And I'm planning on moving into it as my own family home. So I started working on it, cleaning it out. And I was contacted by Beth Moore, who's the city nuisance area inspector. And she asked me gave me a list of things that needed to be done to secure the property, which I did. Went through and covered up any access to the house, locked it up. It's got a 6-foot wood fence surrounding 3/4 of the property and a 4-foot chain link fence on the neighbor property. So it's completely secured. I rebuilt the fence, fixed that. Got started removing the damaged contents of the house. And while I was going through this, I was constantly harassed by the building inspector. I was contacted monthly and threatened with demolition of the house, and they were going to tear it down. And I said, I'm cleaning it out. I've got dumpsters out there. You see what I'm doing. So I've been moving all the trash. The house contents were there after the fire. Nobody had taken it out. At this point, I was told after the first of the year it started getting cold, I was told I needed to buy a building permit, which I did. I spent $500 on a building permit and started working on the house. They said that I needed to do that previous to rebuilding it. So I did that. This went on for a couple of months. Of course, it was winter months, and it was snow, and wasn't much I could do in the house to finish cleaning it out. But when the spring came, I went ahead and got dumpsters and started bringing out bags of refuge and clearing out the internal portion of the house. In May, I was told that I needed to, this was on a monthly basis. I was getting a phone call, and I was having to meet at the house. And trying to do the work myself to save on costs. In May, I was told by the building inspector that I needed to have the building inspector for the city come out and look at the house, which I said, fine. We met out there. He looked at the house, and he told me, well, in order for you to go ahead forward with this, you need to get a structural report. So you need to get a structural engineer. So I said, okay, these are things I was unaware of that needed to be done. So I searched around and found a structural engineer who came out and inspected the property, which I have here, stating that the house, that the property is structurally sound and can be rebuilt. There was a new inspector by the name of Scott Zonger who sent me a letter, certified letter, stating that, you know, the same things that I had already accomplished and taken care of to begin with to satisfy the problem hadn't been done. And I explained to him that they had. He met me at the property, and I said, everything, you can check everything that's on here about closing up the house, sealing it off from, you know, public access has been done. Well, he looked at everything. Oh, well, I just copied the old complaint and sent it. Well, one of the complaint issues was that there was food refuse in the back of the property from the neighbor behind had thrown all their garbage over the fence, and the neighbor to the, I want to say to the east, had complained because there were rats or something to that effect. I cleaned all of that up, took all the refuse out, took everything done, got rid of all of that, sealed up the property. It's not accessible by anybody. And at that point, I met with him, and I mentioned to him, we were talking, I said, everything's been done that you're telling me I haven't done. And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, what else do you need me to do? And he said, well, you got to get started on work. And I said, I'm doing that. I'm cleaning up the property. I'm doing it myself. I said, why would I go out and buy a building permit if I wasn't going to build the house? And he said, well, a lot of people just do that so they don't have to do anything. And I said, well, I'm not going to throw away $500 for nothing. And so anyway, I got started on it. I didn't hear anything more from him at that point. So I continued working, cleaning up the house, started getting some people out, started buying materials to rebuild the house, to do the framing and so forth. And at that point, later on that year, towards the end of last year, my mother, who had congestive heart failure, started going downhill and subsequently passed away in January. I had to go back. She was in Florida. I had to go back a few times to assist her and take care of her. So I had to drop what I was doing on the building. So that being said, I was waiting for the spring to come out so that I could get started on it again so it wasn't so cold, obviously. And I've got people lined up to start the construction and so forth. And I intend to build the house and move into it and live in it. I don't want to lose the house. I've got a lot of effort and time and money invested in it, and I'm planning on rebuilding it. So I would appreciate any consideration that you can give me on that.
So is the roof still open?
The roof in the back half of the house, yeah, it's over the like a third or 2/3 of the house, or a third of the house is covered by the front portion of the roof, and the back half was burned. But that's part of the reconstruction. They're going to put a new roof on.
So hasn't that open roof caused more damage in the house?
Well, just normal. I mean, it's going to have to, the floor is going to have to be replaced, obviously.
Okay.
So I had a couple questions for you before I get to staff. First, thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
How long have you had possession of this property?
1 year.
1 year, okay. And And through all of the things that you gave as updates, have you been communicating with staff or waiting until they reach out to you?
I was getting calls from them on a monthly basis, and I was calling them. Actually, I got a call from Scott Zonger, and I called back to him 3 or 4 times and didn't get a response. I ended up ultimately contacting his supervisor, a Brandy Wallace, complaining because I wasn't getting any calls back.
Okay. So as you've heard from the other 2 cases, one of the stipulations in the motion is that the taxes are paid by today.
Right.
Would you be able to pay $2,196.63 today?
I don't know that I can do it today. I might need a week to get it straightened out.
So you could in a week?
Yeah, a week to 10 days, something to the effect.
And when you acquired the property, did you know it was delinquent in taxes?
No.
Okay. I have a question for staff now. From everything this gentleman kind of reported as far as work on the house and cleaning up and getting the backyard clean, has that been verified?
It has not, Councilmember Johnson. So, and I sincerely apologize for the obvious disconnect here. So the inspectors that were discussed, those are nuisance inspectors. So that would be related, of course, to the yard conditions, et cetera, but it also includes the house and to be reported over. So I have got to look into the status of that building permit because I do not show a building permit on this property. I do, and have not seen that engineering report or any of that the steps have been gone. So the cleanup, to an extent, may be taking place. The violations are still open. They have not been completely resolved. And then, of course, in order to get the structure safe and secure, it can't just be cleaned up. It has to be repaired. But I was not aware of repair actions or an engineering report being done.
Okay.
Yeah, that is correct. It lists 2310 East Alomas. So, yeah. So I suppose in this situation as well, where the ownership has changed, notifications of the hearing and the Board of Code Standards and Appeals meetings regarding this property probably went to the previous owner. So I'm going to say that's probably where a lot of this disconnect took place. But yeah, I've obviously got 2 files I've got to match up here to deal with this house.
So my last question for you, sir, would be, how long do you think this would take to get into code and where you want to move in?
I'd like to move in as soon as possible.
Can you move over to the microphone?
Pardon?
Move over to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd really like to move in as soon as possible because I'm paying rent. And I would estimate that probably within the next 4 months, it could be finished.
So if we gave you 6 months?
Yes, I could do that.
Okay, so would you be agreeable, because it seems we just have a communication issue.
Sure.
At one part of this would be you would need to regularly talk to staff to make sure they know what you're doing and they know about the permits.
Absolutely.
And so you said about a week, so maybe 10 days you'd be able to bring taxes up to code, and you'd be okay with 6 months?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That was all the questions I had.
I have a question for staff. You said there's still violations on, no, I'm talking to staff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said there's still violations out there? Have you
Yes, the
physically
violations.
inspected the violations recently?
Hi there. Kaylin Nethercott. I'm the Neighborhood Inspection Administrator with MABCD. We did, the backyard is not accessible to us. It is a fenced area, so I can't comment on nuisance conditions there because we don't have access to that. We did visually look at the exterior of the property from the street, which is where we have the right to do that. The unsecured roof is a concern. It does appear to be structurally a problem. And so that would be a violation in the safe and secure part of the ordinance that we're enforcing.
So that's the only violation at this point?
On the exterior, yes, it is. It is secured. The windows aren't broken out. There's nothing like that.
Okay.
So,
All right, Councilmember Johnson, how do you want to proceed?
Jennifer, you might help me or tell me if I get the wording right, but what I would like to do is move that we give an extension with the exception that taxes be paid by April 15th. And, sorry about that.
So, Councilmember Johnson, I apologize. What we didn't ask is if there's any other people in attendance that want to speak on this. And so let's pause for a second before we address your motion and see if there's anyone else that would like to address this issue before us today. And I'll ask the two gentlemen at the podium to step aside so that we can hear from the public. State your name and address.
Thank you. My name's Alan Snyder. My home address is 2520 North Rosemont Court. I actually own the property right next door to this, and landlord, and so everything that this gentleman was talking about are actually true. The backyard is overgrown, so it is bad. There was trash in the back. We were getting rodents and stuff, and so all these things came into my house. So then my residents are complaining about that. The other day, about a 10-inch limb dropped off one of the trees that was burnt, and it dropped onto my roof, so I had to go and get that cleaned off and take care of that. I think the thing has been burnt for about 2 years. So nothing's really happened in those 2 years, and it was pretty bad. Now, I believe this gentleman or somebody is mowing the front yard, so at least it looks decent from the street, but the backyard's still a mess. The thing's completely gutted. And then my residents told me here last week that the police, I didn't have any way to check it, or I didn't, but anyway, they said that police officers have been over there recently because there's a homeless person that's now staying in the property. So anyway, it's in really bad shape. So we need to either get it down and out of there, or, if it's going to be fixed, it's going to be fixed. I really doubt that it's going to happen in 4 months, but maybe so. If you get contractors in there and they're just blasting away at it, but anyway. But that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, don't run off. Councilmember Johnson.
Would you be okay with a 6-month extension on this?
We have our own properties. We fix them up, I just don't think things can happen. I haven't seen, by going over there and going to my properties, I haven't seen anything happening at that house. If you look in there, there's still crap everywhere in there. It's burned up. There was like old TV sets, the big console things from the old days, sitting in the backyard and things like that. So I really haven't seen anything that's cleaned up in the house. I guess if it were me, what I do it, I'd bulldoze it. So, I'd get it down and start all over. So, to answer your question directly, no, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd be okay with that. Okay. I would vote against that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council? All right. Seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the bench. And so I would like to figure out how, again, the frustration is, and you've heard me say this already, when you have cases like this, it infringes on all of the property around it.
All right.
So I'm not sure I would support 6 months, but I would support steps. So if they can get the property, the delinquent taxes paid within 10 days, that's a huge step. That's $2,000. That means they're interested. And then if we can look at somehow encouraging, expediting this project. He said 4 months. I'm saying we would need him to communicate and have substantial progress made every 30 days with some kind of reporting mechanism. Then I could see it continue on. But just to say, we're going to give you 6 months, and in 6 months it's not touched and it comes back here, it just adds to the frustration. So,
Vice Mayor, it's it.
Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to offer up, because I, going through this myself on an investment property, and the biggest threshold I come across is getting your trusses ordered and getting your roof on. So just throwing it out there, I think 90 days to have trusses and a roof on would be a good show of we're going to finish this out. It's just my 2 cents.
And so that would be the first benchmark. If they don't meet that, then we start with condemnation.
So in that case, since you have that experience, after that's done, how long would you estimate it would take? Because that would start to go into the 6 months. Because I had some steps I was going to add in there, but then after the 90 days, you got your trusses and struts up. Would another 90 days after that be enough time, in your opinion, to?
I think that'd be a feasible amount. You're still going to have to push it pretty hard, but you shouldn't have any weather delays or anything like that once you get those trusses so I can get the roof put on.
Okay. Probably going to butcher this, but so taking into consideration what the property owner adjacent said as well, since you're putting in the effort, I hope that you prove me wrong, because I've given extensions and thus far nobody has followed through on that. So I hope you are the one. But I would move that we proceed within 10 days, so that would be April 15th. All taxes are current. Within 90 days, substantial work has been done to address the code violation with the hole in the roof fix. And if that were to happen, then another 90 days given to, I guess, finish out or bring this up to code completely.
Yes, council member, that would be appropriate. I would start out by saying you take staff's recommended action subject to those conditions.
Okay, I would take staff's recommended action subject to that. Now that will make sure it doesn't come back here. If that doesn't happen, then it will just get demolished.
That's correct.
Okay. So 10 days taxes, 90 days the roof is on, 90 additional days the house passes occupancy.
Yes.
All right. I would second that. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Prove him wrong.
Good luck.
All right. Madam Clerk, can you, next item, please.
CON 2018-41, city conditional use to allow a boarding kennel on 50.53 acre zoned limited commercial generally located on the northwest corner of West Central Avenue and North Flora Street.
Dale Miller, planning staff. The applicant is seeking approval for a boarding, breeding, and training kennel facility on a half acre that is currently zoned limited commercial zoning. The applicant proposes an upscale kennel for up to 60 pets during the day and up to 30 boarded pets overnight. All animals boarded overnight will be housed indoors. The facility will have both an indoor and an outdoor play area. The kennel will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Fridays, and 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays, and 9 to noon and 4 to 6 on Sundays. Monday through Saturday, the outdoor play area will be available for up to 8 hours and 15 minutes. Less time is allotted for Sundays. Waste material is double bagged and then placed in the outside dumpster. The outdoor play area will have an 8-foot high solid screening fence. Boarding, breeding, and training kennels require conditional use approval in the limited commercial zoning district and are subject to 3 supplemental use standards. Minimum lot area of 5 acres. If there is an outdoor run, 200-foot setback from off-site dwellings and at least 50 feet from the property lines, and solid screening if located within 600 feet of property line. The applicant is requesting a waiver of the 5-acre minimum lot area and the 200-foot setback from an off-site dwelling. The application, as I stated previously, has approximately a ½ acre and is located approximately 70 feet from a home located immediately to the north. Since there were a number of references at the Planning Commission and in some of the protest letters about not having the 5 acres, I wanted to spend a minute explaining about the supplemental use regulations, because they are a little different than the basic development standards that are included in each individual zoning district. Supplemental use regulations have been established for 41 specified uses that are identified in the zoning code and were set up as guidelines. They are not absolute minimums. The code allows the council, gives the council the authority to waive the standards contained in the supplemental use regulations. Unlike the development standards in each zoning district, for example, like minimum setbacks, maximum height that are specified in the zoning district, the only way you can change those substantially is to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and file a variance and go through a separate hearing. The code specifically gives the council the authority for supplemental use standards to waive or modify those. And because one of the complaints that we hear about the zoning code all the time is that it doesn't allow for flexibility, that each application site is different and there needs to be flexibility without having to go through a separate process like the BZA or a variance in order to address a particular system, request. The supplemental use standards allow the council to use its discretion based upon the circumstances of each application covered by a supplemental development standard. So in this case, the council is authorized to waive the 5-acre minimum requirement and the 200-foot setback that are prescribed by the supplemental use regs. And as you can see here, the application area is part of a row of limited commercial zone properties that are on the north and south side of West Central here, where Flora intersects. The yellow, it represents TF3 duplex zoning. And so there was the transition zone to the north with the TF3 zoning, and then the white is the single family zoning. It is developed with an existing building. Apparently it was previously a mattress store. Retail facility. There are retail sales uses to the east, to the west, and straight south. To the southeast is one of the city's police substations. To the north is the home that is the closest home that was referenced. And then there's a home to the northeast, and then homes further north. There are protests of 29.52%, so that will trigger a 6 out of 7 vote to override the protest and approve the request. Planning Commission recommended approval 9-4, and the DAB recommended approval 8-3. The concerns that were specifically expressed had to do with cut-through traffic on Flora Street when apparently at Central and I-235 where the light is, traffic backs up, and so people get impatient and then cut through Flora attempting to get around the backup at the stoplight light. Then obviously concern with noise from barking dogs. And then there was concern about the use of chemicals to clean up the facility. One of the people has a medical situation that they indicated that noise and odors can trigger the medical condition, and so that was the concern there. Comprehensive plan shows this site is appropriate for commercial, and there is a site plan here where the outside runs would be the area shown in green on the east side of the building, and then the main building would house the kennels on the inside. With that, I try and answer questions.
Questions at this point? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a doggy daycare type facility, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We have others of those in the city, don't we?
There's another one on West Central that I can think of that was open 2 or 3 years ago. There's another one off of Zoo Boulevard to the east of the railroad tracks. And then a third one is up in an industrial area off of Broadway, although it's the one I'm not sure is still open, but there was zoning to approve it.
I know years ago we used to have one at 13th and Mays, but none of those are on a 5-acre lot, is that correct?
No. And
Okay.
so that's
So
why.
every time we have to go after the conditional use?
That allows the council the discretion to approve, because only the council can override the supplemental use regs, but that's why we developed that particular part of the code to allow for that flexibility. Because this particular boarding, breeding, training kennel also applies in the county.
As far as the protest petition, is that landowner or can you just be a tenant and protest that? How does that work?
It's only the property owner.
Property owner, okay. But are those, were those duplexes? Were those owner-occupied facilities, or were those? I thought you'd said before that those were duplexes or
Well,
something.
the zoning is duplex.
Okay.
I believe the house immediately north is just a single-family home.
Okay.
I don't believe it's a duplex.
But this site's always been commercial and had traffic?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, for a considerable amount of time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? One question I have on commercial property today where it abuts residential, don't we require solid screening walls?
A fence. The minimum is a fence, a 6-foot-tall fence. Screening wall, masonry or brick is only required with a CUP, community unit plan.
Okay, and so there is a solid screening
If there's
fence,
not one, there will be.
and it goes all the way around the property separating residential and commercial?
It would be along the north. The only place it'd be required is along the north property line.
Okay. And do we know if that's going to be masonry?
Oh, I think it's just a fence. I know oh, wait a minute, I messed up here. The kennel area that's in green, that is going to be a wooden fence, and that's going to be 8 feet tall to keep the dogs in, and what they described was that minimizes the barking because they can't see activity going on the outside. Let's see, there is an existing fence already on the north, you can see there in this slide.
And whose responsibility then is it to maintain that fence?
The commercial site.
So the fence to the north, and if
Assuming
anything should happen.
Assuming that the fence is on their property, they're required to maintain that fence. If the fence is on the residential property, it will count, but if for some reason the residential property owner took that fence down, then the commercial person would have to put up the required fencing. I'm assuming in this case the fence is there because of this particular commercial building and it's on the commercial site, but I don't know that.
It's not a lengthy fence. Would there be any chance to negotiate something a little sturdier than a wooden fence?
As a conditional use, if you felt a more substantial screen was required, then you could do that.
Councilmember Claycomb.
Mr. Mayor, I think the applicant is here. Could we have him explain the screening around the entire facility?
Sure, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Blake Bauer, and I'm with the applicant and Wolf's. On the fencing, it will be an 8-foot tall fence. It's vinyl though, and we do the vinyl on 8 foot, so you can't see through any of the slats. That's for a lot of the noise restriction as well. When you can't see through it, then the dogs don't see what's out there and they don't have anything to bark at. It's really about maintenance and understanding for our employees as well. When a dog's barking, it's not a happy dog. So that we do several things, including fences that are in between there. We'll divide that area into 3 areas to divide that fence up amongst sizes of dogs. On the back wall, we weren't going to change that. We were going to leave that as that 6-foot wood fence, but there was going to be no view different than what they see today. And in fact, we were going to clean up that lean-to shed that's kind of on the back there. You can barely see it on that back corner in the white. And we were going to clean that up, but from the back view, you won't see in there at all, and you won't see in any of those windows because from this whole east view, you'll have an 8-foot vinyl fence.
So the dogs will only be in places where there are 8-foot vinyl fences. They won't be where the wood fence is.
Not at all. No, on the site plan, and I don't want to mess up the computer, but there was that green section only, which basically extends about 20 feet to the east of the building. There it is, 20 feet east of the building and from front to back corners, but nowhere past or, and in fact, in the back, we need that for our parking regulation and numbers. That's our employee parks.
So are you going to pave that back portion?
It is already paved.
Okay.
In fact, we're taking out some of the paving where that green section's at.
Right, but the north end of the building's already paved?
It's already completely paved, yes, sir.
But you are going to put in some shrubbery and trees?
Yeah, after our first homeowners association meeting, there was some feedback, as Dale had mentioned, and so we added those trees. They weren't part of any of the regulation. We purposely added those ourselves to try to create more of a natural barrier as compared to a rock wall. And so we added the one along Flora for the angle over to the house to the northeast, and then we put the 4 trees along the back wall. I don't believe there's trees there now. I think the only tree is maybe that one that's showing there existing on the west.
That looks like it's not on your property.
Hey, it's right on the corner line. I'm not quite sure. That's the only thing in the area though, tree-wise, besides the ones along Flora.
And then you also understand if anything would happen to that wooden fence to the north, it would be ultimately your responsibility then to ensure there's a fence barrier there.
Before you had mentioned that, I did not know that. That's not a big deal though. A masonry fence of some sorts would be a much higher and expensive cost with footings, and that would be a much bigger deal. On the fence, that's no big deal, and I understand that regulation and can support it and maintain it.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Just a reminder to anyone else that might be here to listen to this agenda item. The public hearing was held at the MAPC meeting, and then of course another public hearing was held at the District Advisory Board meeting. So this is not a public hearing, so we will not open it up to the public. We will keep the discussion at the bench and turn it over to Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when this initial application came forward to the DAB, there were many neighbors that were opposed to this, and the DAB initially was opposed to this also. The applicant then met with the neighbors and subsequently came back to DAB and answered their questions. And I think the biggest questions were the cleaning fluid that they used to neutralize the pet urine, and that they convinced the neighbors and the DAB that was probably less harmful than the chemicals that we put on our lawns. It's hydrogen peroxide based. The other couple of things were noise and smell. And again, the neighbors, at least some of the neighbors, believe that those things were not, that those were not concerns anymore to them. Just anecdotally, I live within 2 blocks of an urban doggy daycare, and the noise is minimal, and there is no smell from that. So some of the neighbors who opposed it are now supporters of this, and the DAB, after the second meeting, also supported this in addition to the MAPC and staff recommendations. We got to see at the DAB the entire presentation that Blake made, and it's an impressive small business that wants to come to Wichita and grow a business, and after seeing their presentation, that was pretty obvious. We're probably going to see more requests like these with people who love their pets and our emphasis on downtown living and infill projects. I appreciate, Dale, you giving us the update on the supplemental uses. So after recommendations for approvals by staff, the DAB, the MAPC, and some of the neighbors who are opposed, I move that City Council adopt the findings of the MAPC and approve the requested conditional use request and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Zone 2019-1, city zone change from multifamily residential to general commercial to permit a used car lot on property generally located on the southeast corner of North Market Street and East 13th Street North, 211 and 215 East 13th Street.
Somehow that's not the right show, so. I may have the wrong case. What I had here was zone 1901, not zone 1851.
It is zone 1901.
Okay, so it's the slideshow that's out then. Okay, I'm just going to skip the slideshow then. What this is a request for, to go from B zoning to general commercial at the southeast corner of Market and 13th Street. And the applicant operates an existing legal non-conforming car lot on the southwest corner of Broadway and 13th. And he is desiring to expand his business straight west so that it would cover the whole block face along 13th between Market and Broadway. The surrounding land uses are the existing car lot that the gentleman already operates, and then there's a car lot to the northeast of the application area, and then straight north is a convenience store, and then to the northwest, there it is, to the northwest is a park, and then straight west is a strip office facility, and then to the south is a triplex, that's Zone B multifamily, and then in the red area that's immediately south of the existing car lot, there's a single-family home in the LC property. There's the aerial you can see. Existing car lot to the northeast, and then the applicant's current facility straight east, and then the residences to the south. The comprehensive plan is showing this as appropriate for single family or two family, and that's consistent with the Midtown plan that was adopted, I believe, in 2004. And as part of the Midtown plan, the plan specifically suggests that expansion or approval of existing or new vehicle sales lots is not desirable per the plan. And this is the site. The home there, that's the gray color, I guess, is on the application area, and the applicant has indicated that he would convert that to an office. And then what is the dirt area in front is to be parking. And then on the other side, which you can't see, is where his existing car lot is. There were no protests filed on this particular application. However, the District Advisory Board recommended denial unanimously. They expressed concerns with traffic, that general commercial zoning is out of character with the existing zoning. As you can see, there's no general commercial zoning until you get halfway up Broadway on the east side there. And that the request is not consistent with the neighborhood plan. Planning Commission recommended approval 741, but they recommended approval subject to a protective overlay, which would restrict even though if it's approved, would restrict the GC zoning to NR neighborhood retail uses, only those uses allowed by right, plus the car lot. And so it would make it the permitted uses in our district are designed to be more neighborhood friendly for the residences that abut immediately to the south and for the larger neighborhood, but it would allow him to operate the vehicle sales lot that he desires, and that the signage would be restricted to NR signage. Basically, NR signage is 32 square feet, and there's no billboards allowed, which would be allowed in a GC zone piece of property. No portable signs, no flashing, no off-site signs, and complete access control to 13th Street. With that, I try and answer questions.
Questions at this point? I don't see any. Again, this is a planning item where the public hearing was held at MAPC and the District Advisory Board meeting, so the discussion will remain at the bench. And again, it seems like all the controversial stuff happens in Councilmember Claycomb's district.
It did.
This week.
All right. Again, this one came to DAB, and the DAB recommended denial based on staff recommendation. When they looked at the findings, GC district would allow more intensive uses in the future, not appropriate given the current surrounding uses, and rezoning it to GC will oppose the recommendations of the Midtown Neighborhood Plan, which focuses on preserving and enhancing the residential uses of the area. I think you all received a letter from the historic Midtown Citizens Association recommending denial of this. In that Midtown Neighborhood Plan, vehicle sales is discouraged. In the Community Investments Plan, vehicle sales in this area is discouraged. That plan focuses primarily on preserving and enhancing the residential uses of the area, focusing any sort of commercial uses there on things that serve the neighborhood, such as insurance offices or dentists. It specifically discourages auto-related uses. And so I would move that, because of those reasons, I would move that City Council deny the requested change of zoning classification based on staff and neighborhood and DAB opposition.
Second. So we have a motion to deny based on what Councilmember Claycomb just explained, and a second. Are there any other questions, discussions? Seeing none, cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
Appointments? Comments? Yes.
I have some appointments I need to make.
Okay.
I have to make appointments to my district advisory board. All the appointments I make today will be my district advisory board. I'd like to appoint or reappoint Daisy Oliver, Marco Alcocer, Paul Davis, Ron Tracy, Michael Loop, Dave Robbins, Katherine Johnson, Bruce Gass, Gerald Henry, Cindy Miles, and Jared Cirillo.
Any others?
That's it.
Any other appointments, comments? I move that we approve the appointments as mentioned.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Before we adjourn today's meeting, just wanted to announce that following today's meeting, they will play the State of the City for those that would like to remain in these chambers and you don't have access to view the State of the City. You're welcome to stay in here and view it. For those that are watching online, just want you to know that it's about a 10-minute long State of the City, and just let people know that it's going to be viewed at the end of this council meeting. So you're welcome to stay and enjoy the viewing. I move that we adjourn today's council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned. I know it. Wichita has always served as a place for innovators and visionaries to write new chapters in our history. From our early days as the air capital to our adopted moniker of the opportunity capital, Wichita is known for carrying an entrepreneurial spirit and the fearlessness to embrace growth. Our leaders were proud people, and so are we. The sense of pride remains at the core of every decision we make, every building we build, and ingrained in every program we develop. As a community, we must embrace the challenges we face and forge ahead into the bright future that is just around the corner. All we have to do is walk steadily toward it. I'm Mayor Jeff Longwell, and I'm happy to update you on the state of our city. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to tune in on city television, online, and on social media. I'd also like to recognize the members of our City Council, for without their leadership, we would not be able to develop a broad range of projects and programs that move our community forward in the areas of scholarships and job opportunities for those who need a little extra help, and for countless quality of life initiatives that make each day a little better. The ability to live well is a key attractor for Wichita. Supporting quality of life is crucial as we poise ourselves for growth. The recent Livability.com study measured employment rate strength over time, affordability, and community amenities. And Wichita was ranked in the top cities for work-life balance. There is a new energy that is developing in the city that is anchored by increased development and investments. 1, 2, and 3. We've begun building a beautiful new stadium that the fathers of baseball in Wichita would be proud of, and we look forward to our new AAA team playing in the spring of 2020. Along with baseball, the arts make our community more well-rounded and attractive to those who are contemplating moving here. After it was in jeopardy of being torn down, we listened to the community and helped save the historic Starlight Drive-In and preserve an institution that is also fond memories for many Wichitans. Speaking of childhood memories, we heard from the community and have developed a new aquatics plan that not only keeps 6 neighborhood pools open, it also allows for splash pads to be built throughout the city for extra summertime fun. There is no doubt that entertainment is important. We are evaluating what to do with the Century 2 building and how to best address our need for both convention and performing arts space that will lead us into the future and will honor our past. We have also developed a regional sports complex that is already hosted in its first large-scale regional tournament in a climate-controlled setting. Investing in arts and entertainment isn't just important to maintaining our quality of life. Studies show that they contribute a conservative $94 million to our community each year and make us more attractive to employers and workers. Our economy is headed in the right direction, and so is the growth of our workforce. We are much more diverse than 10 years ago and are vigorously investing in and continuing to diversify our employer base and recruiting new sectors and talent. Our partnerships with Project Wichita, the Greater Wichita Partnership, REAP, Workforce Alliance, and the Chamber of Commerce, just to name a few, are helping us to recruit talent, increase training, and improve the perception of our city and region. We work to help with training programs that can help citizens stay competitive and train tomorrow's workforce. Job skills and preparedness training by WSU Tech, Workforce Alliance, and our own housing and community services help us grow our trained workforce, which makes us attractive to large employers such as Spirit, Coke, and Cargill. The Wichita Public Library, in partnership with Grow with Google, provides computer skills training to help citizens compete in today's technical workforce. We recently launched a program that lends Wi-Fi hotspots to the community to help bridge the digital divide. We're in a good spot. Wichita's unemployment rate is at a historically low 3.5%. and WSU forecasts that Wichita is expected to see an across-the-board increase in overall jobs this year. We continue to work to recruit new employers, talent, and opportunity for our region. Ensuring we have a strong infrastructure is crucial. We are keenly focused on investing in our neighborhood streets as well as our arterials each year because we want to make your commute smoother. We're thrilled at the high ridership of Bike Share ICT and our free Q-Line trolleys. And their success drives our interest in exploring all sorts of transportation, including passenger rail. We are shoring up our water infrastructure by preparing to invest in a new facility. I'm proud of how we've extended the life of our current facility by over 20 years, past its anticipated lifespan, and how Council was able to work together to determine a payment schedule that provides for generational equity. So far, I've addressed a lot of tangible accomplishments, but nothing matters more to me than having a community that feels safe and knows that when they need help, someone from the city will be there to assist. Wichita now leads the way in Kansas by arming its police force with body cams for every officer. This year, we went one step further by updating them so that we can better protect our officers and increase our transparency and accountability to the public. In late 2018, we also launched a shot detection system pilot program to detect gunshots throughout the city and improve response times. Now, we are taking the lead with the way this technology can be used in other crime-fighting areas. We continued to increase our support for public safety and now have 60 more commissioned officers on the street than we had 3 years ago. Many of these people are focused on addressing the root of crime through community policing efforts. And Wichita is proud to have been rated #1 in its fire safety efforts. Only a few fire departments across the country have received this highest of designations, so it should not come as a surprise that it's a very difficult designation to achieve. This #1 rating is good news for Wichitans because it sends a signal to insurance companies that Wichita places a lot of emphasis on fire protection, who then lower your yearly rate on insurance. We are also partnering with Sedgwick County to take a comprehensive look at the behavioral health issues because this greatly affects our ability to use our law enforcement personnel in the best way possible. Our homeless outreach team continues to connect homeless individuals with services and programs to help them not only find shelter or food, but to address the root cause of homelessness. In fact, the HOT team, as we call them, has been recognized by safety officials at the White House as a model program for the rest of the country. There is a major gap in state and local behavioral health funding that has a direct impact on our crime rates and the workload of our officers. We are requesting the state to help fill this gap with significant financial and agency support. This would include improvements in how the state handles releases for probation and parole, and decrease the amount of paroled violent offenders in our community. The safety of our community continues to be a key focus for the council. Just 5 years ago, we were behind the rest of the country in terms of recovering from the economic downturn. We needed to diversify our employer base, invest in our infrastructure, shore up our safety, and focus on our quality of life. And now we have a lot to be proud of. Thanks to the leadership of a strong city council, dedicated public servants, and community organizations, I look around this great city and I see many tangible things that we can all be proud of. I'm not alone. Project Wichita surveyed almost 14,000 Wichitans, and over 66% said they are optimistic about the future of the Wichita region. All too often, the core city services of public safety, infrastructure, and economic development are forgotten as we go about our daily lives, until, of course, something goes wrong. The pothole we encounter on the way to work reminds us there are people taking care of our roadways. Officers come running to help when most people are running away, keep us safe. And caretakers who remove graffiti from our favorite parks keep this city beautiful. Our 17 city departments serve with pride and are a source of pride for this community. The strides we have made this year are staggering because we have something no other city has: the potential to involve, the potential to create, and the potential to transform the city as only Wichita can. I look forward to sitting with you side by side with our sleeves rolled up, shaping our future together, and further developing a Wichita that we will be proud to pass along to our next generation.